All right, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. School committee open meeting. First up, the flag is kind of behind us.
With me to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting is being recorded in Norton Media and in public schools. If anyone else is recording, please just let us know. Justine will be here. She's running a little late, so she had to get a prescription for her daughter, so she will be here. First up is vote to approve the minutes of the September 11th open session meeting. Do all members get a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Any comments, concerns, things that we need to add? No.
No.
And we have a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
And then all those in favor?
Right.
4-0-1.
No.
Oh, sorry. Let me do that. Next up is the warrants.
I reviewed and approved the following warrants: school expense warrant, September 11th, 2024, $410,380.90. And school payroll warrant, September 5th, 2024, $1,117,445.08. I wish to enter these into public record.
Sherry. Next on the agenda is student rep update.
Hello, everyone. So I'm gonna be doing all the talking tonight because Benson has another presentation and he doesn't think you only hear his voice. I'm just gonna, so we have two tonight. We have the high school and we have the Yale. From the high school, one of the best things about the beginning of the year at Norton High School is when clubs and activities get geared up. There have been a ton of important week for returning and new members. Ninth grade students have a chance to really find their niche with the club, activities and class elections for ninth graders, which are ramping up. We've had a few new clubs starting this year, including the Bureau of Belonging. 11th and 12th grade students have been meeting regarding honor societies with those applications circulating. The traditional honor society tapping ceremony, where new members are informed of their acceptance, is coming up at the end of October, of course, and seniors are looking forward to the senior cruise tomorrow, despite the forecasts. It is supposed to rain all night tomorrow, so that's going to be fun. The EA has a tremendous start to the school year, as Mr. Gagan has presented at the last meeting. Hashtag Hey Nation is in full swing. The fourth graders' transition to school has been super smooth and successful, especially as we maneuver from relationship building to getting to know relationship building and getting to know activities to more academic learning. Our fifth graders have been taking the mantle of role models seriously as they are showing the way to be the older ones in school. Last week, Dr. O'Neill spent the day at the Yale for her residency. She was in and out of classrooms, talking with teachers and students and seeing all the excellent learning going on. She was also able to do a few good news calls of the day. What an unbelievable honor and treat it was for some of our students to have the superintendent of schools call home and tell families what a great job their kids are doing. It was a sensation for everyone involved. Thank you, Dr. O'Neill. We have started this week collecting candy for our Hey Nation PTO trunk or treat event. The whole elementary community loves the night where they can get to walk around fantastically decorated trunks to collect some candy prior to Halloween. This year's event will be held on Friday, October 25th. So much to look forward to. That's all we have for you.
Thank you.
What's the theme? Hold on. What's the theme for the cruise?
Black and white.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. Have fun. Yeah.
Anything else for the students?
What was that?
Did I say anything else for the students?
Nope.
Good to go. All right. Next up is opening school remarks for our high school.
Thank you very much. So one of the biggest parts of opening a school at high school is definitely transitioning to ninth grade from middle school. So that's actually something that began last year with the various meetings up at the middle school. We actually had the incoming ninth grades come here in June as well for a step up day where they got a chance to have a panel with some students, get a tour, meet with the administrators, things like that. And then we had an open house actually before school began. So on Monday, the 26th of August, we had the school open, student council ran sort of a presentation, kind of got the students involved in what the norms are, so the lunch schedule, try to find classes, all those things. there. So that was a really good transition for our ninth graders. With them too, we also had class meetings where we got a chance, administrators, to kind of go over some of the expectations. And this year, just to kind of update you, some of the stuff that we're continuing. Lancer Learning Block continues to be a huge focus for us. Last year, we really tried to incorporate a lot of direct curriculum in it. We took a little bit of a step back from that in the spring because we wanted to really focus on making sure students get what they need. So focusing on some skills, especially about reflection, being in touch with their own academic needs, and also through the interventions we can provide there at our IMTSS. So teacher generated interventions, meaning that they're going to pull some kids during that flex time to give extra help, make up tests, those types of things, but also students to find what they need, find extra help. So we continued that this year with our MyFlex, making sure that students are able to really access the support. We're still working with our PBIS, and I know there's going to be a presentation later tonight about sort of where we are as a high school. We're really focusing on common expectations this year. This is something that we got the ball rolling last year with incentives and points for students. And we realized we need to sort of take a little bit of a break and really focus on what those common expectations are. Make sure we're really living that matrix, making sure everyone is on the same page with what our expectations. So we're kind of taking a pause, but we're really focusing on the values, what that means in the classroom, in the hallways, bathrooms, cafeteria, et cetera, just as all the other schools have. And we're really looking forward to that paying off in the future with that continuity of students all the way from pre-K through 12, having the same type of values when they're thinking about their expectations in school. So that's kind of where we are this year. A couple of adjustments we made to our IMTSS plan. Last year, we really focused on a PLC that was interdisciplinary. This year, we're really trying to make sure that we can have some time during our school week for teams of educators who all have the same students to convene and talk to each other about sort of student progress. And that's something that's happening actually during what had been our faculty and our department meeting time. The other part about LLB is it allows common planning time for our teachers. So they get a chance to get together, talk about assessments, curriculum, those types of things. And those are another point of emphasis for us this year. The year's been going off great. Our teachers began the year really with a lot of community building things, some sort of identity hearts. We have the Whoop wall in one of our classrooms, which is opportunity, obstacles, and plan. So things that all students in there sort of thought about for the year, how you schedule your time. So different disciplines did different things in order to build community within their classrooms. A lot of time in the classroom. I've kind of noticed anecdotally walking around to rooms, people are going a little bit analog this year. Definitely was a huge technology push through COVID. People are kind of stepping back, doing some hand journaling in English class. They actually cut out the prompt and pasted it into the composition notebook, something that you might do previously. And it's almost like a novel to the students because it's all technology wise. So it's something that's almost new. Even going back, instead of looking at sort of a 3D model of a cell online, they're using microscopes, getting in there, looking at cheek swabs and things like that. So a little bit analog this year, but it's been a great start to the year. Students really getting used to the routines in classes. We've already gotten some of our career exploration stuff off the ground here as well. We've had 2 field trips just in the first couple of weeks. One of this was the New England Public Works Expo. We had about 12 students go there, get a chance to be exposed to all sorts of trades, things they might be able to do within the public works sector. And even today, our innovation pathway in manufacturing. So students who were involved in that pathway had a chance to go over to Gillette for the manufacturing mashup. So they got a chance to do a bunch of different activities throughout the course of the day. As far as sort of making robots that could actually carry out their directions, those types of things. Our innovation pathway teacher, Carrie Murphy, too, this summer did an externship at AccuRounds, which is a manufacturing industry in Avon. So she was able to do that and just bring some of that expertise to our classroom this year. Some of the great events, we had the senior sunrise breakfast, 5:45 a.m., pretty early. I have to say I wasn't there. I didn't take that picture. That was from one of our advisors, but a great time. Really good turnout for it there as well. Some of the things, our sports are off and running. We've had lots of success. I gotta make sure I get all the sports in the records here. Hold on, look at my notes. So with it, our varsity golf team has been having its strongest year, 8-4 this year. They've been doing really, really well. Boys varsity soccer and girls varsity soccer. Boys is at 2-3-2. Girls is at 4-4. Our volleyball team right now is at 3-5. We have our unified games. They've gotten off the ground as well. We've had 2 unified games so far, 1 home, 1 away. They're 1-1 here. We had played Dedham last week, and we were at Westwood earlier this week. And then definitely our cross country, both boys and girls, although they had a meet today. As of for this meet, they were 1-0 each. They both won their only match or their only race of the year. And our football team's currently at 1-2. So off to a great year. Looking forward to more good things to come.
That's right.
Any questions? For Dr. Nolan?
Good start.
Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is a vote to approve the DAP trips for 24-25.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. We are here for our annual visit for Norton DECA to approve our out-of-state field trips. So I have two of our officers here who are going to talk to you a little bit about our experience last year and kind of the great successes that we had and what they're looking forward to this year. So I'll turn it over to Benson.
So we are doing very well in DECA. We are about the second largest student organization at the high school. So we have right now, we're looking at about students. So registration and stuff is complete. But Isabel will share kind of specifically what trips we're going to be going on. But I did want to share one thing that should be in your notes is that this past March, I believe, Norton DECA received the Platinum Award for the Chapter of Excellence, which is essentially a very friendly, competitive way for Massachusetts DECA chapters like ourselves to kind of measure how community oriented they are, leadership skills, how they are involved in their school culture, and what they're kind of trying to do to serve their neighbors. But that is something that we are really proud of. It's the highest award or the highest place that you can get for that. So out of 10,000 other students in Massachusetts and over 300 other chapters, we had an excellent group of students who worked really hard toward that. So we're just very proud of that.
So this year, we're seeking approval for 5 overnight trips. We have our power trip in November, which is an optional leadership conference for the students. It's not one of our competitions, but students can attend leadership workshops there. And then we have our districts in January, where this is our main competition where all members go and compete their role plays and events. And we'll see if they qualify for states. This year, we're hoping to have a lot of I think Mr. Bortman said 80% of our students qualified for states last year from districts. So we're hoping to have even more this year. We have a really great training program that we're already working on. Our next trip that we want to seek approval for is our Sports and Entertainment Marketing Conference in Orlando. This is similar to the Power Trip. It's another optional leadership conference for our students. Then we have our states, which is going to be in Seaport this year. In the past years, it was in the Prudential Center, so it's going to be a bit of a change for states. And then our ICDC, that international competition, is going to be in Orlando this year. And I think we had 3 people qualify last year, and I think we're going to have even more people qualify this year, hopefully.
So I try to take a second to publicly acknowledge the work of our student leaders. That award that Benson talked about, we were the top chapter in the whole state that received that. And that was greatly due to the work of our student leaders and the things that they do throughout the years. So for example, there was a group of them that went to Boston a couple of Saturdays ago that went to go volunteer at the MDA, the Muscular Dystrophy Association walk. They took their Saturday to go do that. That's a cause that's important to DECA, and they went out of their way to go make sure that Norton DECA made a presence there. They do community service in the school. They do community service outside of the school. They do a ton of things to really make our organization known and proud, and we are so grateful for them. They greatly deserve that plaque that we won last year. But we are seeking approval for all of our trips, just like every year. So we're happy to take any questions about any logistics or anything at this time.
I don't have any questions, but I just, being on school committee for so many years and watching how much this DECA has grown over the last 9 years is just amazing. And I think it's a testament to all of you guys, right? All the work you've put in, the leadership skills that you've kind of shown and demonstrated with your peers. The public speaking that you guys do, it's unbelievable. I mean, for kids your age to get up and speak in front of a crowd is not easy. But you guys do it very well. Super proud of you guys.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I don't have any questions. No.
How do we vote on these all together? We get to vote one by one?
No, you can vote on them all.
Vote them all together.
Yeah, anything overnight or out.
Perfect. Okay. Entertain a motion to approve all 5 trips?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye. Good luck,
Good luck.
Good luck.
Bobby. Always
Come
good to
back
see
and
you.
let us know how it goes.
You're just sitting right here. It's very
Back in the day.
Next up is Mrs. Searcy and Mrs. Sumner for PBIS overview and updates.
Darn acronyms.
I got it to work.
There you go.
Karen. You proud of me? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, there we go. All right, well, thank you very much. I just want to take a second, having been at the high school and seeing some of the work, I think that the staff do. This isn't a class. I think it's really a distinction from some of the other local school systems that have a DECA class. So they spend time, both the teachers and the students. They do this extra. This is all extra for them. So for them to win that award, I think is really outstanding. I just wanted to take a second as one of my many roles to say, I see that and it's very different. And thank goodness I don't have to try to schedule a class. So we are just here to do a little bit of a quick update on the school, on the PBIS and where we're at.
You spoke too soon.
I did. There we go. All right, so as you know, we have PBIS across the district here. And we're not going to run through all of this, but this is kind of the history of where we were and really where we're at. And we're approaching 10 years now, which is quite amazing. We started in 2016, really kind of getting folks set up for this. And I've worked our way through in the elementary schools, especially. I'm not going to middle school or high school, but have really been the leaders in this. And then now moving on to starting their tier 2 practices, understanding that a process like this is a 3 to 5 year process. In that, we had a little thing called COVID in the middle of it all, so that threw us off a little bit. But so we're right now, the elementary schools are all in tier 1, beginning their tier 2 practices, really have a solid understanding of where they are and where they're going. The middle school, as we talked about, I think last year, started back up. They had it going. It kind of got dissolved a little bit during COVID, and then they really started to ramp it up again the last year or two. And I think especially towards the second half of last year, you really saw the team come together and the pieces you put in play. And as a start, high schools has really at the very, very beginning stages of this, started to move in a direction and got feedback from staff and students and said, okay, we need to take a little bit of step back, which is normally part of this kind of process. It's not unusual, and kind of reevaluate some of the work we're doing. And now we're going to be moving forward again. So again, really well getting to it. These are 3 big things that you're looking for, and what the research shows that by implementing with fidelity PBIS, you're going to accomplish. You definitely can have improved student outcomes. Obviously, students come first. That's what we're looking for, academically, socially, behaviorally, and as you get into the upper grades, a reduction in things like suspensions, substance abuse, so forth and so on, and then a reduction in any kind of expulsory or office discipline referrals, suspensions, restraints, all of those kinds of things that also can happen, and then honestly improve teacher outcomes in the terms of you creating a more positive environment. We all want to work in a place where things are positive, language is positive, expectations are understood. And so by implementing this system, these are the outcomes that you're looking to achieve. Whoops. Let's try that again. All right. So one of the things you have to look at, because it's scientifically driven, is fidelity. Are we doing this with fidelity? If you're not implementing any kind of behavioral support plan, whether it's an individual plan or a whole across the whole school, you have to make sure that you're doing it with fidelity, that you're following the same expectations, that you're giving the reinforcements in the way that they're supposed to be, the consequences in the social lessons all need to occur at the same time, or in the same manner. So there's a fidelity measure. If you're at full implementation, you're at 80% or better. That's what you're looking for. As you can see, over the last few years, we're in the 70s, which again is fairly good, but we got up to 82% last year at the elementary school.
primary schools, and then at the secondary schools, again, because you're starting programming, you're not gonna be here. You're not gonna have some of the pieces in play, so we're moving up and we're at 78% as of last year. So just looking at the individual schools, again, not to get to too much detail here, even though there's a lot there, when I say that, what you're looking at really is the fidelity measure that each individual school, and again, you're looking for that 80%. So they do it, in the spring, here. So again, over 80% at the Salamis.
And the breakdown is on the teams, the structure of the teams and the function of the teams, the implementation of the strategies, and how they're evaluating themselves. Both teachers participate and students.
So again, good progress, again, a dip at different times. Sometimes again, because the teachers evaluate themselves, you'll actually see sometimes they'll grade themselves harder. It's kind of like one of those things you get to know what you're doing. You're like, oh, we're doing a good job. And then you get to the point, you're like, oh, I really get this now. Oh, we could do better. So you sometimes see that. And if you look at the national data, that's very and then just looking at the actual outcomes. So these are office managed discipline referrals. This is the worst triangle in the world. To me, it's not. But the old red, yellow, green, you guys have seen it in many different ways. So this is the Salamis since 2021. Obviously, there's a little bit of a dip there. Again, I'm not blaming it on it, it's just the reality. And it's come back up. So this means that
But the dip is still, the
Way
students
within,
in tier 1 are still above 80%.
which is what we're looking for. So you look
So
for
above.
80% of the kids, not perfect, right? 0, but 0 to 1 major office referrals. And it doesn't mean that they're not spoken to, right? These are corrected, but are not receiving any kind of major referrals. And then the yellow is 2 to 5, and then 6 or more. So,
So it breaks it down on the next slide, just to look at the past 2 years, because that
That looks more like a
rectangle is not a triangle. But it was important to give the historical overview, and so now we're just looking at the past 2 school years, and you'll see that the whole thing, for a lot of these interventions, is growing the green. We've grown the green, and we're above where students should be in tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3.
and I think what,
Let's jump in real quick, just because even on our sheet, it's very hard to see.
yeah,
That green triangle is give or take at 98%,
Mhm.
96%.
Mhm.
Do we know, like, that's 96% of our JCS kids
Yes.
are getting 0 to 1
Mhm.
referral.
yes.
Since you can't see the yellow and the red, what is that percentage breakdown? Do we know that?
I don't have it off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
we
but
can get
yeah.
Is that something you can just kind of provide? Because like,
Yeah.
I think it's kind of important to know that, like, obviously, hopefully, we want to keep the red down, but if
Right.
red was 1% one year and 2% next year, on this chart, you're not gonna be able to see it anyway.
Right.
But
Yeah.
those are the decisions that the teams are making in like their live meetings, and we're looking at, is it an outlier? Is it a student that's struggling? Is it cafeteria? And we have to look at cafeteria and practices, and how we're flowing with a new group, or the kindergartners need to learn how to sit at a table that their feet don't touch and their bellies don't touch. So it's kind of looking at it holistically, because it's not meant to look at student individual data, but really our tier 1 practices in reaching the students across settings. But we can give you that as well.
Right.
So it looks
again,
like from last year to this year, the red is a little bit bigger in
Yeah.
last year's versus the year before, but you're saying it could be because of any one of those reasons.
Yeah.
And it could be,
Yeah.
maybe just one kid struck, we just don't know that. Okay.
So when the teams meet, we take that data out. We don't look at changing interventions for the whole school, because 2 students need a different
Yes.
level of learning.
Right, okay.
And I think the other thing is what the teams do too, is they'll look at that. And yes, we've grown the green, but now how can we raise the expectations?
Mhm.
So sometimes, in my experience, what I've seen in the schools that I've done this, as an adjustment counselor, for example, will say, well, here's our expectation, right? We need to grow it here. But we're here now. So do we add on another component? Do we raise that expectation in some way? Do we look more at the classroom? So that's what the teams are doing. They're using the data to make decisions about where, when, and how they're addressing not just negative behaviors, but positive behaviors as well.
Mhm.
That makes sense?
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
like when we say grow the green,
Yeah.
It looks the same to me, you know,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
so like
right.
when we, like, again, I'm not doubting that it did grow.
Yeah.
But like, it'd be nice to just be like, hey, we grew from
Mhm.
96% to 97.8, that's
Right.
growth, you know?
Right, right.
So I think if that could somehow be.
And remember, this is
whatever, Yeah.
different groups as well.
Right.
Correct.
So, you know, I hate to say it that way, but especially like, we'll get to, you heard Mr. Gagan do his thing at the hay, but they're rotating that group pretty quickly. So a lot of times we're looking at growing the green kind of in the middle of the school year too, right?
So based on this, like if we look at like year over year,
Mhm.
if it's like an outlier, like a couple of students, couple, whatever it is in their third grade,
Mhm.
would that essentially affect the Yells numbers the following year? In that
Depending on how our
red,
interventions
yellow?
at the
Yeah.
tier 3 level go, yes.
And I'm
Some
assuming.
schools, oh, sorry.
No, go
I would say
ahead.
some schools would take those students completely out. They
Mhm.
wouldn't, they don't even do their office referrals.
Right.
Essentially, our numbers are at a place where we can include them. Because then we really want to say, okay, where is that data coming from? And where maybe are some of those kids that are in the red or the yellow? Where are they struggling? And if we can identify, you know what, for that small group, the cafeteria is the problem. We can either put different kinds of tier 1 interventions there, or put interventions for tier 2 and tier 3 into that location. So it's not just about, you know, doing a kind of an individualized plan, which could be the case, but we have to look at our systems. That's part of what this is about. It's not just looking at the individuals. People get wrapped up in the reinforcements, which are lovely. I love the positive. But the bigger piece of this is when we look at this data at the school level with the teams, we're looking at the when, where's, and hows. And then sometimes that's about the adults in our systems more it is about the kids.
Mhm.
That's what you want to start to look at.
So I'm glad to hear that you don't pull anything out, because I think it's important to keep it all in,
Right.
right? So that we have like a
Yeah.
true picture holistically.
Yeah, I feel like that's manipulating data. by pulling
Yeah,
stuff out.
yeah, I think
Yeah, I mean, what,
That's stuff you don't want to
If
say.
maybe there's, maybe
in my
there's a
prior
reason why they
district,
do
in
it,
my
but-
prior district, we had quite a number of programs, and what we would do is we would run program data. Same thing, same for process, but we would take those students, and I had a school, basically it was all the programs across the district, and then we would look at our data across the district.
Mhm.
We're not big enough for that. We don't have enough of those, but that's how some schools do it. So it doesn't impact the bigger school system, but you're still tracking those programs. And we do a version of that even within our programs. If you looked at our program data that our individual teachers do, at the LG, if you want to see data, go see some of the people over there. It'll blow your minds away, like how much data they have. And they do it based very much on the same principle. It's just for their individual classrooms.
Now, obviously, we broke it down by school. Is this
Yeah.
possible to do by grade level? Because then we would be able to see, like, could you take a 2020, well, let's throw COVID out here.
Mhm.
22,
Yeah.
23 second graders, and then 23, 24, now they're in third grade.
Mhm.
And then would we be able to see that this is actually going and working as this group of kids slides through our system in our grade levels?
You can, you just have to remember that interventions are changing and improving each year. So it's not a total controlled setting, year 1, year 2.
Fair.
It's a different teacher. It could be a new teacher, could be a teacher on maternity leave. I think there's too many factors that you could compare. Like
Plus our-
strongly apples to apples.
What's your expectations, right? So when they're in second and third grade, I mean, I think we do kind of look at that because we know, like, sometimes you're like, okay, be prepared. This group's coming up, right? Like, there's a reality to that, right? And here's the things that we found at the Hay that work that maybe the middle school wants to adopt. But moving from the Hay to the middle school, right, there's a lot of things that they're going to be challenged with, a lot of personal and system things that are different. So, like you said, you can do it. I don't know if it's as comparable as we would like to think it is, because think about, I always look at the 8th grade as coming up to 9. You go from pods, you move in not much bigger area than this. So now you get to high school, right? So just learning how to maneuver around. By nature, you're going to see some different kinds of behaviors that probably wouldn't never manifested themselves at the middle school because you didn't have the opportunity. If that makes sense.
So do we have to review this program overall, like if the state comes down with new disciplinary measures, do we have to then say, we have to look at our PBIS plan and kind of
So
adjust things like
they,
the things we can't do anymore, or these are the recommended, like, do we have to constantly do that with updates?
so under the regs and the law around the new discipline, you have to have something like this, and this is one of the things that they recommend. We were ahead of that curve, so we didn't have to do something new. So just, we decided, no, we're not doing this anymore. We'd have to do something like, restorative justice or, responsive classroom. The costs are prohibitive for those kinds of things. And this is the kind of the gold standard. Even a number of our grants that we've received over the years, having a well-established PBIS system is something that is a very big plus for us, to be perfectly honest. If you didn't use the data, like we're able to have that conversation because we have the data and we use the data. Other places have PBIS. They have it, but they don't utilize it well. And I've been in discussions at DESE or at conferences where they're asking those tough questions. I have all the confidence in the world that we can answer those. Other districts, maybe not so much. So this is the LG fidelity data. Again, you can say well over 80% in almost all areas. I think they can be tough graders themselves, personally, because they're looking to improve their systems a lot. Again, the weird triangle, that's not a triangle, because we have so much green. So like you're asking, like, where's this group? Right? Where was this group as we follow them along?
Because I clearly.
Yeah, we can kind of tell where that group is. But there's still, even then, like that's a really tough group. We're still in a really good place. I would love to have shown you some of the data from my own.
Kind of piggybacking on Nick's point a little bit, and you mentioned this as well. When we look at the schools where there's that transition year where it's going to the Yale, going to the middle school, going to the high school, do we see this report reflect some of those challenges you mentioned?
Sometimes, but I think what you actually hear is we're starting to hear is the kids saying, oh, I get it. A hashtag's like a Purple Heart. Oh, I get it. Respect this way is, yes, it's different, but no, it's not. Like, and that's really important, as Dr. Dolman said, this idea of carrying it through, not exactly, right? But the general idea, we want you to persevere. We want you to show some grit. We want you to be respectful. Here's what it looks like when you're in the LG. Here's what it looks like, as you move up, right? And that's where the following the data, but also the real life teaching of the art of this comes into play. So, and then the Yale, I know last time you were here, Mr. Gagan went into a lot about his PBIS and his hashtag. Their fidelity data is excellent, and they've come a long way, to be honest. They've worked really, really hard. So here you go.
Here's this. Yeah.
Right? It was the LG.
Yeah.
There's that group.
Yeah.
They're still there, right? They're coming, by the way, for the middle school. But again, I think it's okay. And again, you're talking about 2 to 5 office referrals. We're not talking about 20 office referrals here, right? We're talking, if every one of those kids had 5 office referrals, it's not over the top.
But that then helped drive decisions to build tier 2 practices at the Yale. And that's where they're ahead in building those practices.
Kim Fulton is doing an amazing job.
Yep,
She's
Dr. Lauer's doing a
school
great
district
job. The
judge, yeah.
teachers have really taken it on, so.
And again, and if you think about it, as the kids get a little older, you're going to naturally see this. And that's what you would see across the state, across the country, actually in PBS across the world, right? So you're going to expect to see some of this as they struggle. The other thing unique to the Yale is you're bringing 2 groups of kids together. So I don't have that data in front of me, but some of this is definitely peer conflict, right? Having lived at the Yale program.
But I would highlight that the 3 elementaries, when they first started, thought it was important to have the same expectations. And when it first started, there was the comment of the 3 silos. And this is somewhere that they really came together.
Yeah, that was one of my first ever meetings. No,
Yeah,
quite nice.
They did a nice job. Yeah.
So one of the other things we thought was really important to highlight, especially for the Hay, is that they were part of a study that was conducted, and it was really about kind of disproportionate discipline and how that connects to PBIS and utilizing these strategies. So a group of teachers, along with the administration, worked with one of our PhD fellows, and they did some work around this, both in terms of data, but also in terms of what coaching and discussions about what it looks like, expectations, cultural factors, and all of that. And one of the things you look at is what the risk factors are for those kids in terms of being over referred for discipline, and how can we address that, and how can we teach the skills that we're looking for. And so based on that, as you can see here, we had their risk ratios were improved greatly, which means their academic scores go up, behavioral incidences go down. And so we had some incredible growth, and that's a real credit to the work that the staff did over there. And obviously we have a change in demographic, and we have to be aware of that. So again, kudos to them for taking that on. They did that, completely voluntarily, and they wanted to learn how to improve the practice. The middle school, again, their fidelity data, even during the time where they kind of had their dip, still stayed pretty high. I would have, again, in my little district, killed for some of this data. They really worked hard even during the times where they paused. And then they really ramped it up last year. They really worked hard to get back to where they were. And so here's a question: why did that go down? Because they were more focused on being consistent with their office referrals. It's something they looked at. They weren't necessarily during that pause being as their fidelity in practice wasn't as good. So they worked really hard to make sure, listen, if this is an office referral, this is an office referral. Doesn't matter if they're in this class, or this class, or this is what it looks like in the hallway on Tuesday. If it's an office referral on Tuesday, it's got to be an office referral on Wednesday. So that was kind of their focus, and they recognize that within themselves. So as you can see, there was a little actual dip there. But if you break that data down a little bit, one of these things, when they ramped back up towards the end of the winter, I mean, the end of the fall, early winter, you saw some of that improvement.
Yeah.
So here's, for example, we call it the red line. We redlined that there. They started to ramp up to here, and they really got it moving, and then you saw the improvement. And I'm just gonna say, we had a question about data the other day from one of the teachers. Good question, but one of the things that Mr. Haywood said about this was that it's not just about the data, which is really important. It's about the connections that, especially in the middle school, staff is able to make with kids around positive interactions, right? It's not that, he really wanted to stress that, making sure that we're recognizing the 80% of the kids who are doing the right thing, and making sure they understand that and they feel welcome, they feel connected.
So I think, Vinny, just like what you just said there, and also we've talked about it plenty of times here, and as well as parenting in general, when you set clear expectations and you are consistent and there's consequences for, I think this is what you see, right? Then you can see the growth of our children.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
really all we can ask for, as parents, as a school system. So
And
it's nice to see that's happening.
It's really important about recognition as well, right? Because
100%.
again, it's not, people get caught up on the trinket or the thing, it's not
Right.
about that. It's about that human connection.
Exactly.
I just saw, I had a young man at the Hay the other day. I was walking down the hallway. He came out of the bathroom. He looked at me. He said, "Good morning. How are you?" And I'm like, "Good." He's like, "I'm glad you had a really good. You're having a good day." And he walked away. And I started to walk away. And then I'm like, "No, I've got to turn around." I followed him into the cafeteria. I found his teacher. I recognized that she gave him a hashtag, but I pulled him off of, and I'm not saying for me. I'm saying that's the kind of interaction. And we had a nice discussion about how polite that was. How he exceeded expectations. He wasn't just like, "Good morning," and walk by. He exceeded expectations, and I wanted to make sure he recognized that. That's what this does for us.
Isn't that what most people want though, right?
Right.
Just that pat on the back, the positive,
And we get questions,
Makes a
especially
difference.
here at the high school from staff about, well, this isn't what the real world is like. And then,
Well, it can be.
so I did an informal
get
survey this
stressed.
weekend. I did a little informal survey this weekend of friends and family that work in the quote unquote real world. Almost every one of them who work in anything other than a mom and pop kind of
Yeah.
situation like larger corporations have some staff recognition program,
Yeah.
right? Something along those lines. Even they said, one guy said, listen, because they'll say it's just their job. They should just do this because it's their job as a student. Yes, they should. But one of the guys is a sales guy. He's like, yep, here's where my sales are. But if I go here, much better for me. I get a lot of incentives. I get reinforced for doing my job. Right? So in the real world, we still have incentive programs.
Yeah.
And this is just one way, but it's all the factors. It's the positive, it's the consistent consequences, it's the consistent expectations and the clear language. We're seeing the growth. We hope to keep it going.
It's really nice to see, honestly, yeah.
I think it's so easy for us in this day and age to focus on negative things, right? And to
Yeah.
focus on those, 3 or 4 students that are taking so much of your time and attention. But we forget sometimes that all of these other kids are doing the right thing. And so recognizing them for their work and for their efforts. As Mr. Cersey was just talking about the Yale School, I did my residency day there last week. Like, I had the best day. The kids were super polite, super engaging. Like, it is running like a fine-tuned machine over there, which was just awesome to see. And I think the biggest part is the relationships and recognizing kids for doing good work. Because if you don't recognize that, eventually they're going to stop.
Right. So at the same time, though, I would also encourage us to recognize our staff as well, right? Because they're the ones, like you guys have said, they're the ones kind of running this machine. And without them, our kids wouldn't be experiencing the, level set expectations, the rewards, or just the kindness. Like something for you to go out of your way to pull that kid aside, that's huge for that kid, right? It's just a little bit of kindness, a little bit of positive reinforcement. It can make a huge difference in somebody's life.
And honestly, the staff member makes you feel good, right?
Absolutely.
Most
It's
of us-
kind of
when
selfish
we went into this
sometimes,
field for a reason,
Yeah,
right? To see
exactly.
interactions. I mean, I know, we've talked about, difficult situations or situations we're having there with kids and, sometimes it's when you can't make a connection with the kid, that's the most frustrating
Yeah.
one, right? So this is a positive thing for staff and it's run by staff. It's not a top-down thing. That's what I love about you guys. It really is a grassroots effort. And you see that the elementaries have, and now the middle school, and I think the high school will come around. It's a process. It's not something it's not an intervention you turn on.
Yeah.
You have to really go through it and work through it and look at the data and make changes. It's a living kind of situation.
Yeah. Please make sure the staff knows how much they're appreciated for what they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
guys.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Capital projects, what was that? Good evening, everybody.
On that note, I'd like to take a few minutes and just kind of discuss about our summer we had this summer. I really want to send a shout out to the custodian crew of Norton Public Schools. We started off 22 men in June and we lost 2 positions. So we were down to 20 positions, cleaning 5 schools, taking care of 200 acres of property. I am just so super proud to use Sherry's words of the work that those guys and girls did this summer. There wasn't a day that went by this summer where we did not have somebody in our buildings. These buildings being used 365 now. We had daycare at 2 of our programs this year. Champions really extended their daycare. And that was really, as soon as school got out, to really where, about a week before we went back to school. That means there's a lot of kids in our buildings all summer long. And my crew has to work around all of that to get these buildings ready. And when my crew gets these buildings ready, they go in and they start at the top of a classroom and they work their way all the way down. They clean furniture, they scrub floors, they dust everything. It's a complete clean a job that they do on these schools. And I'm just so proud of the work that 20 of my members did this summer. A lot of them gave up their summer vacations and days that they normally would have taken off just to stay here and get the work done. So we had shiny floors for the first day of school. I was lucky enough to walk to school with Dr. O'Neill just before we started. And I was blown away. And I think anybody, if they walk these halls in our buildings, any building, even the Yale School, which is our oldest building, I am so proud of how these buildings look. They're bright, they're clean, they're healthy. And there's 20 guys taking care of these buildings. And I just a huge shout out to them. So I'd give them a hashtag if I could.
You do not give them credit. We have a number of high school students that work this summer.
Yes.
Through the youth works and some other programming.
and they were their supervisor, and, on a number of cases, I am not over exaggerating when I tell you that these people have changed lives.
100%.
Like, I can think of two individuals that literally have changed their outlook on themselves and their futures. And that's a credit to Wade and his leadership, but to the men and women who support these kids when they're in these buildings. It's so that's more work on top of the work,
Yeah.
right? So like.
Do they know that? The custodians that,
Well, the ones that I, you know.
Yes,
Yeah,
they do.
okay, yeah, that's
And
awesome
they
to know.
recognize, we try to thank them as much as they can.
yeah,
Having a student come into our buildings and watch and work side by side with us, it's the growth, as Mr. Cersey said, is incredible to watch. And as a mentor, as somebody who's with them all summer long, to watch their growth from day one to day, you know, to when they leave us in the summer, it's pretty cool. I mean, I guess some really cool stories about the summertime help. They're amazing kids, and it goes back to just everybody wants to be included. Everybody just give them direction, give them clear direction, and they'll step up to the table. And I think it was just it could have been a really, I guess, downer summer when you lose two positions in such a small crew. But it wasn't, and I can't publicly thank my guys, my team enough. They really, every single one of them rose to the occasion, and I'm super proud of where we are right now. So that's that. But I'm here for a capital update. You want to go?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we joke about the Yale School, right? Because it's the oldest building. I have never, ever seen the Yale School look so good, so early. Like usually I feel like you're like racing to the finish line, but it was, and I, you know, both Wade and I took the time to tell the custodial crew at the Yale, like that building looks incredible. They did an amazing job. They were done early. Like I've never, ever seen it look so good. They have a lot to be proud of this summer. So
It was a great
we're
team
super
effort.
grateful.
It was a great team effort, and I'm super proud also on how they're buying into Team Norton. And I think that's something that I've started, is really them having accountability for their buildings. And when you see my guys are making a difference. They're good morning to these students. They're opening doors for students. They're a big part of their life. And I just publicly want to say thank you to each and every one of them, because they were outstanding this year. So as far as the capital updates, I'll be quick on these here. I promise. We are working on the middle school vestibule over there. That is the only school that does not have a second lock-in vestibule. So you can walk into that building after you get clicked in the first door and pretty much take off. So we've hired a locksmith, our locksmith, which is Clark Locksmith out of Providence. They own our keys. So we've hired them to put locks on the second set of doors. We're also going to go with key access there as well, so teachers can key fob themselves into that building. And that's all in the process of being done right now. The middle school, high school gym, if any of you have seen that already, the refinish has been completed. It came out really good. That's a 1998 building. That floor had a lot of coats on it. We took it right down to the bare wood. We repainted the lines and finished it off, and it just brings a certain brightness to that building. It's clear, it's white. It's really been quite a transformation. We're not quite done there. We as part of the refinish, we were supposed to put some center court. Anybody who goes there for volleyball, we were supposed to go with some center court volleyball post. Unfortunately, fortunately, we looked into the plans before we actually started drilling, and the conduit and the water pipes that were under the gym floor there stopped us from being able to put the inserts in. So at this point, we had to reorder inserts that'll just go into the top of the floors, which will hold the post, but it's a different system. But they don't go deep into the floor. They just go into the hardwood themselves. But once that's done, we'll be able to hold middle school volleyball over there, center court, which if you've been over there for one of the volleyball matches, it's kind of off to the side. It's a little awkward right now. But we're getting there on that there, which, by the way, middle school volleyball, I believe, is 3-0. I think they're having
They
Oh,
had 40 kids come out.
Yeah.
Amazing program. Amazing program.
40 kids.
Yep.
The JCS elevator, that's been completed and that's been passed by the state.
wait,
So-
can I just go back to the middle school for 1 second?
Sure.
What about that fire panel? Whatever happened? Oh, you get.
I'm saving
we're
the best for
coming.
last year.
Sorry.
It's called burying the lead.
The JCS elevator has been completed and it has passed state inspection. As we know, there was no issues with the state, with that elevator. The state just passed new laws, which required us to catch any hydraulic fluids. We had to put a pan on the bottom of that, so we had to remove the piston, put the pan in, install the pan, and then have that there. So that's all been done and inspected, and that's been a huge project. And that again was done all while we had ESY in the school this summer, so we had to work around that as well. Which thank you to my vendors who were willing to work around us on the days that ESY was not there. Door locks and handles. That's another capital item that we're working on right now. So that's going to be JCS and LGN key access for their back doors. Right now, we give keys to teachers. So if they're out for recess, they have to give the key to the student. If the student has to run into the restroom, we're gonna have key access back there so we can, if they get lost, we can just delete them. We don't have to worry about keys going out anymore. So that's something that we're working on there. We're gathering quotes for that right now. The middle school cafeteria roof. This was a capital that was granted to us a few years back. And really what we're doing with that money right now is just making repairs as needed. That roof, we met with MSBA a couple of weeks ago. We'll know by the end of October if we get accepted into that program. That's a 1998 roof over there, but unfortunately the metal part of that roof was manipulated at one point in its life. And it has just really rotted out to the point where you can't do anything with it anymore. It's unsafe and it's not healthy for the building at this point in time. So we've been putting, if you go by lately, I'm not very proud of it, but there's some bubble gum up there right now that kind of tar that we just kind of smushed up there to stop the rain that was coming in, just to prevent it. We'll find out with MSBA where we're at with that. If that doesn't go through, then it's going to be a bigger conversation, I think, down the road. So. The athletic campus, we are holding back $32,000 for the tennis courts. The tennis courts were engineered and designed a certain way. The contractor did not follow the plans. We were lucky enough to catch it. I guess, after the fact, but before we signed off on the project. So we've asked that they come back and they redo those again. And it all has to do with where the posts are, which was our issue at the middle school, if any of you remember. Because our heaves are so heavy here, the area where the posts go into, they didn't set correctly. So they're coming back here and we're gonna make them redo that there. And then once that's done, the complex will be done. We'll sign off on it and we'll be done with the project itself. That's been a tremendous project. We've had people on it every single day. And I'm so proud of where we are with that. We're making money, we're putting money aside for the turf that we someday when we need to replace it. And I think Tim and Aaron, they've done an incredible job scheduling, making sure that everybody that is renting the field has it. I think priorities have been set. It's been about a year and a half, almost 2 years that we've been working on that there. And I think we're finally getting the hang of it. But the fields themselves, from everybody that we talk to, they're amazing fields. There's something that Norton should really be proud of. Our youth groups are on there. They're no charge, as you saw Pop One around there tonight. They're out there, they're doing their things. We see grandparents come with their grandkids, just go out there and start throwing the ball around and using the hitting nets. It's really such an asset for this town, and it's something that I'm really proud of. For years, we heard that we didn't have places like that for these kids to go to, and now we have places, and they're taking advantage of it every day after school. You see people out there working out on these turf fields, so I'm really proud of those fields. Hopefully we can close that project out as well soon. The hot water tank here at the high school, we had a failure in March. So this building, 2000. Probably that tank was probably installed around 2012. The tag on it was 2011. It finally went in March. I had conversations with Christine about putting it on capital. Unfortunately, it was too late for spring, so we were shooting for fall, knowing that we had the one tank that was still providing hot water to the school here. Of course, 4 days before school starts, that hot water tank gave up. So we've already submitted our paperwork for capital. I think Christine has had conversations with town to where we're going to go with that there. One tank has been installed. We put an exact replica back in there. So the one that came out, we put one right back into it. So we didn't have to change any plans. The gallons and all that were exactly the same. And then we'll wait for fall capital. Hopefully we get approved for that second one. Asking one hot water tank to provide hot water for this entire school is a lot. So we really need that second one.
Wait, just a quick question.
Yes.
in your expert opinion, do you think the Norton water situation hurts those water tanks? You can leave it at that.
I have no comment. Do I think the water here, I mean, we've had contractors out here and the history in town, you know, the water is hard on our equipment. All our equipment, our boilers, our hot water tanks, our steamers in the kitchen.
Showers, everything.
It's hard, it's hard. I know the town's working hard to clean that up, but yes, it makes our equipment life probably a little bit shorter than it should be.
Thank you.
Okay, the middle school fire panel update. I'm kind of excited about this one, but then I'm kind of not excited about this one. The middle school fire panel finally is reading normal, so it's not beeping any longer. We had to jump through hoops. We had to do a ton of work. Thank you to Siemens who searched and found a new old product that we could put in there, so we could finally get that panel cleared and up and running. The problem with that school was the entire building was up and armed, except for there's 8 actually beam detectors in the gym. 2 of them failed. From 1998, they failed. So Siemens, as we all know, they're not making devices for the old panel anymore. So we can't just grab an old one and stick it in there. We had to upgrade the panel. So we upgraded the panel a few years back. We have the brand new panel in there. It doesn't talk nicely to the old equipment. So we couldn't just put a new beam detector in there. We had to wait for them to find new old stock, which is what they ended up doing. We ended up putting new beam detectors in there, and then we had to find an old module that would talk to that panel. Once they found that equipment, we got it installed, the panel's back to normal. It leads us to the bigger question of what we want to do. We're sitting on capital. Capital was approved last fall. We haven't moved on it because to be quite honest with you, it's
It's a very complicated process.
It's
which
hard.
We'll share with you.
Yes, so Siemens is a great product. We have them here. They're a wonderful product. They're a good quality. We have them here in the high school. But they own their system. And we had this conversation, I think, last year when I met with you guys. So it took some time, but we went out, Christine and I, we talked to a couple engineers, we brought them in. We discussed the idea of maybe going to some universal devices, universal panels. And we got some quotes back that were just, I mean, to be honest with you, they were just outrageous. It would be foolish to spend that kind of money. The help quote that I got as we were waiting for the engineers to get back to do that properly, we lost that because that product went up and we lost our timeline there. So now their books were full and they couldn't get to us till next summer. So that jacked that price up. So long story short, we don't have the money to do a universal project right now unless we went back to capital and asked for a lot more. It would be quite a project. I reached out to Siemens, and after they helped us finally get this panel planned out, I asked them if they could break the device migration down to 3 different years for me, so we could buy some time. So there's 9 loops in that building. So they do 3 loops a year, if that's what our finances could afford, and that would be for $49,000 a year for 3 years, and that would bring in all new devices. Eventually, we do 3 at a time.
So with doing 3 at a time, how does that affect the other 2 loops?
The other
Like,
2,
we're gonna run into the same situation you just described.
as soon as we did 1 loop, I would actually save those devices. Now they're outdated, so legally we can't put them back in. But if we had a failure in one of our other loops of the old devices, that's when we go back to the beacon panel again, because we wouldn't be able to, unless we could find some new old stock somewhere, which this took almost a year to find the new old stock for the beam detector. If we do the whole project at once, that came back as $149. And that's not counting the electrician's fee at all. So either way, I think you know either way it's going to cost us more money than what the original capital was. So I think that's the bad news there. The good news is that we finally have that panel up and running. again, we're waiting for something to go wrong, because once something goes wrong, that whole loop's gonna be gone again. So I hope that all makes sense. I did have a great conversation with Captain Wood the other day, who, you know, he has his opinions on where we should go and what direction we could go at too. But, and I think we all did after we met last time. I think I felt very confident where I wanted to go. But then once we brought engineers in and we started really looking at what it would take, it's quite a project. I actually was with help earlier this week. They're doing the exact work over at the Attleboro Housing Authority. And I just, you know, I went over just to kind of see how the project was going. And it's a project. It's a really big project. And you know, I don't know if we're willing or able to take on that kind of project right now. So.
If I could just give some context to Wade's conversation about the engineers and all of that. So once you reach a certain monetary level, you have to go out, not just for bid, but kind of through the RFP process. And for Christine to write up a bid, we would need to go out and hire an architect or an engineer to write up that bid for us, because of all of the details that go into a fire system for an entire building. Like, as I joke all the time, I went to school to teach second graders how to read. I did not go into it to negotiate with cyber terrorists or all the other things that we do all day long. So there are people out there that know how to do these things. So we reached out to a couple different engineers that could write up the RFP for us. It's going to cost us $30,000 to $40,000 to have someone come out and do that. And then they also gave us estimates on Wade shared the plans for the building. So they have all the information based on their expertise and what they think could possibly run. We're looking at a $300,000 to $400,000 range for this project. In order for us to go out and redo the entire building, we would have to replace the fire panel. So knowing how our budget is, knowing the conversations that we're having about every little bit matters. Do we spend the $30,000 to $40,000 to have someone put this proposal together for us in order for us to get back actual legitimate quotes when we know we can't afford them? And so that's kind of why we've been spinning our wheels on this situation. We were super fortunate that we were able to find, as Wade says, the new old equipment or the old new or whatever it was. Because as we know, it's just been beeping incessantly. And so thankfully it's clear it's working, but I think it's a bigger conversation about what can we do and what can we afford? And I apologize, Nick, because I interrupted you. You did.
What
What's your
does,
thought?
we got capital last year for this.
Yes,
What was that
100
for?
and
27.
Is it 20? Yeah.
720.
Yeah.
So we got $127,000 of project last year. What, that money just still sitting in capital for us? We can kind of use it whenever.
Yes.
We-
For
For
that project.
Yes. So we got 127K right now. Do we have to give that back at some point if we do not use it?
It sits for quite a while.
It sits for a while. Okay,
They
so
ask
we
you
don't-
every year.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's worth it to pay somebody to do the work, and then if we can't afford to do
And
it all at
that's
once.
kind of
it
our
got-
thought too.
Yeah, it sounds like what
I
Wade
guess-
said, it works right now, and then if things break, maybe doing the three, the three stages might be a better option for us through capital to do that in the future. I can't imagine spending $30,000 or $40,000 to have somebody write something up when, that could be a position with where we're at right now. Do you know what I mean?
And I think that's the hard part, right? Because we had this conversation as a committee last year.
Correct.
Audrey, I apologize, you weren't here for it, so we'll build you a little background. There are positives and negatives with any situation, right? We've talked about proprietary systems and how they kind of have you for now, and we've talked about the importance of making sure we do things right. I couldn't in good faith, the three of us in good faith couldn't really say, okay, let's spend the $40,000 to have someone write up this plan when.
We're not gonna follow the plan.
Right, exactly.
The plan is not
Waste
achievable.
of money.
I think
But it sounds like they were willing to work with you, looking for the new, old, or whatever, however you put it, but
They-
at least they didn't say, no, we can't do that. Like, at least, so it sounds like they're at least willing to work with us and know where we're at.
Well, I think the calculated risk is how long
It'll
can that
last.
go
So
on?
it's a 1998 building, right? So we know
Yeah.
what we're looking at for age. You're supposed to change your smokes every 20 years. I'm a commercial building 15. So we're to a point where these devices should be migrating soon. I think the other interesting conversation that Christine and I had when we were talking to the engineers is even the universal systems, they're all going, they're more highly, I
Or
guess,
proprietary.
thank you.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
sorry.
Nope.
Sorry.
You guys want a
He
minute?
was- What we spoke to said, so why do you want to get rid of it? And we were like, oh, of course, we want something more universal so that we can just call and pick whatever we want out of any manufacturing facility. And he's like, well, that's the funny thing. Those particular ones, like the notifier, they're starting to say, now you can only use the notifier equipment with it.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm just letting you know, that's not right now, but he's like, down the road, that's where they're headed. So we were very caught off guard with that too.
Yeah, I mean, these devices are so smart now that they all need to be programmed and somebody owns that program to
Yeah.
program them. So, again, I think Siemens is a good product. They've done right by us finally, like by fixing this panel. We've had no issues here. They've been a very good system. This is how they operate. They come into new construction, they low bid, they get in, and then they own you. But it's no different than any other company. I mean, I think that's what I'm hearing, and that's what we're running into right now.
So I guess when it comes to this project, the other risk is if we go outside of Siemens, then you're kind of starting over with, could be a whole new set of problems.
Would have to be engineered, yep.
So you
And
have
that's
to-
why the cost is so high, because you're taking everything out. And clearly, as I said, we don't have the $300,000 to do this at this time.
But if we have the 120 or whatever still in capital to use towards this project, why couldn't we just go your original route of fixing the
We
nine?
could do two.
Right, but still two
Yeah,
is, I
6
mean,
loops or whatever.
right.
I'm just confused though. Someone highlight again. So we have this project, we have $127,000. Why didn't you do it?
Because the committee had asked us to go and get quotes regarding switching out of Siemens
Yes.
and going to see how much it would cost us to go in the other direction.
Yes, we wanted to see if we could get 3 quotes to figure out
Right.
if there's a cheaper
And
option.
so we couldn't write up the RFP because we don't have the technical knowledge to write up the RFP. So we've talked to multiple different engineers over time. They've all quoted us on different, what it's going to cost them. They've given us estimates. And then they call us incessantly because we said, hey, can you give us a price and give us an idea? And we're not ready to move forward with it. But finding 3 engineers to be able to go through the process for us, to give us some sort of an idea, it's taken us months to get through to people.
But what you also learned is that a lot of these companies, it will be limited to one,
And they might not say that now,
right?
but for
That's
people
where it's
inside
going.
the industry,
Right.
they're saying that while they might say it's a universal thing now,
Right,
doesn't mean it always will.
right.
So you spend the money. It's not that we don't want to do the project, because we have to do this project.
Right.
But Sherry, you were on capital last
Yeah.
year, you know how much we fought for it.
Right.
But going out to find other quotes to see if we could replace the whole thing, it's been just one.
Well, I think
It
that's what
grow-
we-
as Christine said today, it grows legs every single time you get to a different place. It's like peeling back a stinky onion.
But I think that's what we asked of you guys last year when around the time we had this meeting, we asked you to do that research and get back to us. So I think
Yeah.
it sounds to me that it's not worth the monty and effort to go that way with
And I
how,
I'd have to
unless
look
I'm
to
missing
see
something.
when we had that conversation, I think it was a little bit later, might have been about for December. when we
It
had
might
the
have been,
Conversation, but
yeah.
we'll have to look at it.
what,
We were at the LGN.
Yeah. it was-
yeah,
You
it
are-
had to have been earlier on because we
Still on the
didn't,
road
we were
show.
going
We're
through
still on our
capital.
roadshow?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so it had to have been earlier,
Yep.
yeah. So I don't know, unless I'm missing something, it just doesn't seem like it's worth going down that road of doing this. I think I would rather see using that money and changing out at least 2 of the loops now, than we just have 1 more to do. That seems like a more cost-effective,
I don't like doing any project in stages if we can avoid it. I think that is a recipe for disaster, to be completely honest. You're gonna get a thing, now it's gonna be, this loop was in 2024, the next loop wasn't done until 2027. To me, that's a nightmare when we're talking about $49,000.
Is it a nightmare though, or is it easier, like, and I'm just thinking. When you separate things out and do like one project, like one part of it a year, because then you don't have to come up with so much money all at once, like every so many
Yes.
years, right? So is it, I don't know enough about this field to know, like, I know, like a simple example, like painting your house, like the outside of the house, like my father would always do one side, one year, one side, the next year. Then it was always like a rotation, maybe that was an 80-year-old thing, I don't know. That's just a simple example that I'm.
And then you're
thinking
always
of.
painting the house.
Yeah, right, but it's not always, it's not always the whole house at one time. So I'm just wondering I don't know the technology of this, so I don't know if it matters.
So ideally, I think, Nick's right, like, if you're gonna do a project like this, you generally don't want 2 years apart, 3 years apart, 4 years
Okay.
apart. You want to be somewhat close
Yeah.
in time. And I think a project like this, if we were to approve, I think if you were asking me and again, I think if it was me, what I would do at this point is probably do the 2 loops, and I'd probably schedule them for Christmas break, December break and
Mhm.
February break. Go to the spring capital, ask for the remaining money for the
Yeah.
last loop and try to get that done in April. If that's too soon, then sometime vacation. So within a year, we would have that whole building brand new and up and running. We
Yeah,
do have the 127,000 and we're sitting on it right now. It does make sense to me. It's already been approved for this work.
Right.
It does make sense to kind of move forward with this project. And again, I mean, I don't want that panel to stop even again. Like, I mean, it's
Right.
been a joke in this town
Yes.
for a very long time.
Yeah.
Cause what's the balance we've been asking for, like 30 grand?
Well, I
Do
guess
we
that's-
have a full quote on the
Yes.
entire project? What is that?
149.
149.
149.
So
20 grand.
Yeah.
No,
I guess this is the next thing.
I'm sorry, 135.
Plus the
135
electrician.
Plus the electric.
plus
Oh,
electrician, and the other is 49 plus the electrician, 3 years.
So I guess,
Still not that much.
correct, and why did this take a year? Why wouldn't this been on fall capital? So we could have requested this for our next capital, and then we could have done this entire project together.
Yeah.
Um,
It's one of those situations where it just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I guess the question that I have is, do we have the flexibility within our facilities budget to perhaps pay the other percentage of it, Wade's saying no?
that
Just-
budget is being pushed
It's
heavy
really
right now.
tight.
I mean, 2.5 custodians are coming out of that budget right now.
Yeah.
That's a heavy budget.
I don't think it's unreasonable to ask capital though.
To ask that for that
Can we
small
still, can
amount,
we still put in for capital? Does anyone know?
I don't,
not for fall.
Not for fall.
no, we're too.
We meet next Wednesday.
Yeah, we're way too close. Yeah, but you could for spring,
Yeah.
and like Wade said, it could still all be done in this.
Can we put a warrant? No.
No.
No, no. don't need to put on that.
I think you
No,
just
we
go,
also
I
can't
think
do
you
that.
go for spring, I think you go for spring.
Yeah.
And then everything will be done, because he has to spread it out anyway, like, because of,
The amount of work that's involved.
yeah, and not having kids in the school.
I think, Nick, if it makes you feel any better, the amount of work that needed to get done to get these quotes, it's not, like, you just can't call somebody and be like, hey, I'm doing 9 loops and we're doing 365 devices in middle school. Like, they gotta come out, they gotta walk the building, like, there's a lot of work involved. We're coming off one of the, I mean, I don't think our business office has ever been this busy with the budget situation that we're in. I mean, we're not sleeping, I have a list of work that we did this summer. I mean, if you want to take a look at this, the work that we completed this summer, like, we've been busting our hump. This isn't our only project that we've been working on.
Of course.
My goal was to get it to back to normal, to where we were running 100% in that building safe. But I mean, we're working sleep. We're burning the candle on both ends on this. And
Yeah.
I apologize. You know, if you think a year is too long to get 3 different quotes for such a massive project, that's on me. I'll take the blame on
Well, I
it.
think it was information seeking too. Like,
Yeah,
we asked you to get information, and I think, like Christine said, it just kept opening up more and more as you kind of went into it. But I would actually ask you, Wade, to share that, what you have, what you did in the summer. It's just like with what the leaderships, the teacher leaders did
Yes.
about what they actually do.
Yeah.
Because we can sit here and we can say, you know, we're so appreciative and the schools look so great, but we don't necessarily know what it every single day looks like. I would love to see what our employees
Dr.
do.
O'Neill, myself and Christine had a meeting, I think October 2nd, facilities update. This was slated to go on there. I did bring it tonight because I I was going to bore you for an hour. But my marching orders were to keep it quick. I figure it's best to sit down with my superintendent, go through the summer projects with her first, and then if she wants to share that.
I will, I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to see and for people to know what you guys
I
do
don't
on a
think
daily
people
basis.
understand
No,
what we do
yeah.
with these buildings on a daily
100%.
basis. They, I mean, picture your house and the amount of work that you put in your house, and we have how many students come in every day, in and out, cars pulling in the parking lot. I mean, the wear and tear on these doors alone, like it's amazing what we accomplished with such a small budget in the facilities department and 20 guys, again, like 20 position crew. It's just, yeah, we do a lot. And we also do the snow removal, and we also do all the sidewalks, which most people in town don't think that we do. We handle that. That's our work. We make sure that these buildings and sidewalks are safe for school. That's 2 guys in each building trying to handle all that work there. So it's a lot of work that we ask these people to do. And I think, you know, with very little, you know, thank you. And I know I don't have much to offer my guys right now, except for a huge thank you. And that's why I felt it was important to thank them today.
Wait, I want to address the comment you made about being able to call and get quotes. Christine is very much a stickler when it comes to procurement law, as she should be. As she should be, because it's her that's going to jail if we do it. And she would not do well in prison. So I think it's really important to know that, like, she is so methodical. And like, sometimes Wade and I would be like, well, can't we just, and she's like, no, we can't. We have to go through this process and then this process and this process. So and doing things right takes time as well. So I want to thank both Wade and Christine, because there were definitely times where I'm like, I don't understand what the holdup is. Like, I don't get it. Like, and it was a lot of work for them to, and quite honestly, it was a lot of work for nothing, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's not. So, but I think if, you know, Wade's timeline is accurate and we can do the winter break and then February break and then go back to Capitol for the spring, I think we can do it all within the year. And I think, quite honestly, as somebody just said, we would probably have to spread that out regardless because of the amount of work.
Right.
And we cannot have the buildings without fire protection when students and staff are on the in the buildings. Sean won't allow it. Jason wouldn't allow it. Like, we have, right?
Right.
So we have to have that.
It's a safety.
We have to have, you know, appropriate fire protection when our students are in the building. And so it would be done during breaks.
Yep.
Anyway, so.
I just
Wait.
had a quick question
Yeah, please.
about this. So when you do it in stages and you upgrade the 3 loops and then you still have 6 loops that are in the old, I don't, this is well above my understanding of anything, so forgive me if I'm not making much sense, but you have 3 new loops and 6 old loops, they can all still talk to each other or like into the panel?
No, yeah, so the panel has like 9 different computer chips, let's say. They'll replace 3 at a time. So those 3 will be talking to the new devices. The other 6 will still be talking to the old devices until we can replace them. And what they've told us is, and it's true, I mean, if you do some research, there's no more old boards, there's no more old
Right.
devices. And that's why.
But it won't like create more of an issue?
No.
Like, that's what I'm thinking, as you.
Nope, they're separate loops. So as long as that whole loop is all brand new devices and they come back and they talk to their computer, then that's fine.
So I
And
guess
I'm not
the
an
other-
expert either. By the way, I do want to publicly thank Captain Wood because he's been awesome. He's been my savior.
Who's Captain Wood?
Bob Boyd, he's communications in the fire department. Our whole fire department, John and I go back a long way. Our whole fire department is very helpful, but Captain Wood, that's his business is communications, and he is just been a lifesaver for me. So, because I'm not an expert on this stuff.
I'm like, I wasn't putting fire with Captain Wood. I don't know. I don't know.
You know, Bob, you know Bob?
11 meetings left.
He has the next
I
two
know,
girls,
I know,
right?
I know.
Sarah and Casey?
I don't know.
You're talking about boats over
I
here.
swear this.
My teacher, yes.
I had Sarah.
Am I the only one that thought that?
Yes.
Yes. You want to find yourself in that thought, Sharon. So I guess like the outstanding question I would have is, how do we know it's gonna be done in a week? Like, is that something?
It's my job. make sure that I schedule it and make sure that we can get it in and schedule it and get it done. We're gonna start it. We gotta finish it. Let's, the sooner we can sign the contracts, the sooner they can make sure that the stock is in and it's ready to go. And then we'll go ahead and schedule those events. And to be honest with you, it's working, right? So if we don't get into December break and we do February, April, and then right into summer, like as long as we can go to capital in the spring and get the remaining money, we're still within a year's time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very big difference of doing it 3 loops every year.
Yeah. I think this sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
Thank you, good. Thank you all, we appreciate it. Wade, thank you so much.
Thanks, Wade.
Is that all you have, Wade? I feel like
Go
we're
on.
shutting them down. I'm like.
Wait,
"Do you have anything else for us?"
That was not short.
That was quick.
It's 30
It better be
minutes.
quicker than Mr. Cersei, because I gave him a hard time.
It's
That
30
is true.
minutes.
Thanks,
That is true.
Number 8, discussion and vote on back to capital for capital supplement.
Okay, so one of the conversations that Christine and Wade and I have had, and then I had with Dan and Nick as part of our, catch-up meeting, is that it really might be beneficial for the school committee to kind of put together a subcommittee on capital. As you know, that we have a million projects constantly happening. It's the 3 of us. I mean, really, it's Wade and Christine, going through, getting all the bids, working with all of our vendors to make sure things are up and running. But I also know that the committee doesn't love the way the process for capital goes. It's unfortunately, it's reactive because at the end of the day, we don't have the money to do all the fun stuff that we wish we could do, right? And we're always talking about how things sit there for a while. So my suggestion to the committee would be for us to select 2 people to be part of that capital planning committee that would meet with Christine and Wade and I a couple of times a year. Honestly, it would not be a big lift. It would be, leading up to the capital meetings in the fall and spring, and potentially like an update meeting just to kind of keep you all, in tune to what's going on. So that is my proposal to you.
I mean, just my quick thoughts on it. I think it's a good step in the right direction. I feel like, from sitting on this for only 2 years, but like Audrey is now our capital person. She's walking in and having no idea what's going on. I feel, and like, even as chair, like, I feel like we get told what capital is. We have no idea what's actually happening. That maybe with at least 2 people on. My biggest thing is educating whoever our rep is, to be able to go to capital committee with the town and be able to say, this is what we need, and actually be able to have an education behind themselves of this is what we're fighting for and this is why.
So I can tell you from me sitting on that committee for so long, that's exactly what I used to do.
Yeah.
Like I used to sit down with Wade and Joe when
Correct.
he was superintendent and just say, okay, like what are our priorities?
Why?
Give me top 3 to really go in and ask for, right? And we can touch base offline too, I mean, and talk it over more, but I definitely would take some time and sit down with them and, then like, we do it in the meetings, but just kind of having that sit down and going through things
Yeah.
is definitely
And-
helpful before going into the meetings.
Correct.
I like the idea of the subcommittee, but like we talked about at the last meeting though, it's almost like a bigger thing, right? Because I think as a capital committee, there's so many times where people come and go, right? Because they're on a board
Yes.
for, so you just finally start to understand things, and then that person doesn't run or isn't there anymore, or somebody else switches. So it's hard to really get some traction. Really, the only one consistent there was the town manager, because he's on that committee. Dan, he was there when you were there, right? So it's been that long. He's really the only consistent piece of that committee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if we need a committee or if it's just really Audrey sitting down with,
Here's my
these
thing,
guys.
what I do like about the committee is if you got, obviously I would think Audrey's gonna be on it.
Yeah.
But like, I'm just throwing this out there, Dan's also on it. Now it's Dan and Audrey. If Audrey goes and loses an election, we got Dan who can step in and fill that role.
Oh,
And
so
then-
you mean more like just kind of
Yeah,
educating, like,
information.
okay,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
And I think,
Yeah.
to our point, to what I hate hearing, I've been on the school committee for 9 years and that project's been on our capital list for 9 years. Why is it on there? either take it off or get it done, you know, so like,
Well, because it's not that easy.
yeah, well, it is.
Well,
It is
it's,
that easy,
it's,
though,
well,
but for us,
no,
the
it's
call
not
file
that
we
easy
have.
because we still need it to be done, but other things have come up that were more of a priority and there's only so much money.
But that's where we need to, the five of us need to do a better job of highlighting that, hey, there's no longer, this is going to get pushed down. This is going up. And if it needs to be that the schools are going to get $400,000 instead of
Yeah.
250, we're putting our rep to go out and fight for it. Maybe not 3 things this year. We're going to fight for 4 because we gotta get
Yeah.
it. We gotta get it needed. We're gonna have the water heaters come up.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to replace water heaters?
No.
God, no.
Yeah,
You know, but those things
Yeah.
are gonna come up. However, if we can also get the athletic bus, because that's been sitting on there, or we
Yeah.
can get the middle school floor, because that's been on there for 9 years.
right.
That's what I think we need to do a little bit better of a job at, you know, and I think and that's not knocking you by
Yeah,
any
no,
means.
I get it.
I think it's, from a subcommittee standpoint, working with Jen, making it a little bit more formal. Those 2 people now can come back and update the 3 of us, and then everybody has a little bit more of an education on, hey, this is why we're going to capital, you know, and then we can look, this thing's been sitting on here for 5 years. What do we want to do with it? I think
Yeah.
after 5 years, it's either we really start pushing for it, or, you know, we're like, hey, this has got to get done next year. You know,
Yeah.
we're gonna let this one go next year, but the next one, you know, do it that way.
Yeah.
So, and again, I think I agree with Jen, and I don't think it's gonna be a heavy lift. I'm picturing this like orderly. Like, there's,
Yeah,
correct,
Be
yeah,
6 months out of the year.
exactly, you know, so I just hate coming in, going to Yell and being like, here's capital, and we're like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
We really have no choice, great, just check off on it, you know,
Yeah.
because we know nothing about anything that's on that list.
Yeah, I think my
And,
thought
and
was,
sometimes we have no choice either, because
Of
Right,
course, of course.
exactly.
the hot water goes, the elevator
Right.
fails.
Right.
I mean, we've
We get it.
changed what was number 1 to number 3 and put something else in 1 because we had to. We
Exactly.
only, you know,
And that's
when you
gonna
sit
happen.
in on the
Capital's-
meetings and you see what the pocket of money is,
Correct.
you know,
And
you've
it's not a lot.
got to make decisions and, you know,
Well,
yeah,
I think the capital committee, to me, was tougher than the budget process. Because you have so many one-off things, but you have so much money tied off
Mhm.
right off the top.
Yep.
With these multiple year payment leases, and we've done it too for our, but it can't be the habit, it has to be the change that we need, like, that's the thing that needs to be looked at, and maybe
Agreed.
with, you know, something with, and like Sherry said, the problem is, you know, every meeting, it's like, you have to go through the history of the capital committee, because
Yeah.
it's got a new member or something like that. So I mean, I think there should be further discussion, and maybe if we have a joint meeting, that's something, you know, because unfortunately, you know, the way I always thought it is, you can't say we have $400,000 when $200,000 is already tied up in year 2,
Yeah.
3, or 5. Because then you have, you know, you have to kind of say, well, you know, police needs 2 new cruises and fire needs this or something, and then the schools need a floor. But then the schools are also gonna be like, oh, we also need, you know, if you're a homeowner, you're gonna replace your rug or your hot water heater, it's the same thing with capital sometimes. There's only so much money, so I think the larger discussion, you know, not to go off, is having some discussions about how capital is run. But I agree, I think a lot of what capital is, you know, just needs to be, it sounds like we're all somewhat in agreement that just the communication aspect
Yeah.
with either the rep or the 5 of us, or if there's 2 of us reporting back, whatever that looks like, would probably be in our best interest to just kind of get a better idea of, you know, historically, you know, if we're gonna get X amount, like every year we're gonna get 100,000, then we need to be creative and, you know, figure that out prior to going to meetings.
I think it's just, you know, it's almost like it needs to be revamped, just like we're using, you know, free cash for operational, but right? So it's one of those things that we're kind of in this cycle of doing that we can't seem to break the cycle
Yeah.
because we don't have all this excess money to break that cycle. Right? So it's kind of like those 2 things, the free cash thing and the capital really kind of needs to be looked at, how it's running and how maybe possibly it could be changed. It just seems like we're in a vicious cycle with
Right.
how we run this town.
And I think, well, not even that, I think we're kind of in a cycle with the school committee too.
Yeah,
Doing the same thing for however long, you know,
Yeah.
around capital. And it's like, wait a second here, we're not getting, all we're getting is our complete needs. And that's really not what capital is designed for. I mean, yes, water heaters are gonna come, but we gotta fix it.
yeah,
But like, capital should be some of your wants, you know.
Well,
some
in
of
all
your, like,
fairness, I
hey,
mean,
you know.
we've done pretty well.
Yeah.
For a number of years with capital,
Yes,
we
it's
really
been-
have.
it's been-
So I don't want to be
No,
totally
correct.
negative
Yeah,
on
yeah,
it,
yeah.
right?
No,
Because
that's not-
we did get some of the things that we needed, but we did get a lot of the things that we wanted.
Mhm.
So I just want to make sure I put that
Yeah,
out
and
there.
I think also it's a key time right now that you have town hall and a brand new community center
Yeah,
that should take, hopefully, should not be a whole lot of capital going into
Right.
those two new,
Yeah.
brand new buildings, you
Yeah.
know? You know, now obviously you got a fire station that's starting to get outdated, obviously you're shortly, whatever, police station's
Police
fairly
station,
new.
yeah.
You know, I mean, I
We've done
get,
a lot there,
you know,
yeah.
but I feel like right now is a good time in town that's like, hey, let's look at this holistically. We can't necessarily change what town capital committee is going
Mm-hmm.
to look like. What we can do is revamp our process a little bit and make sure that our rep feels comfortable walking in and saying, hey,
Yeah, for sure.
you know.
Yep.
So I think that's
Agreed.
kind of where it is.
Agreed.
Hey Sherry, what's the makeup of capital? Is it planning board?
Planning, select
us,
board, us,
FinCom?
FinCom, and Mike, town manager. Yeah. But maybe that's something, Nick, when we do the joint meeting, that we just bring up to them. Like, how do we
Yeah.
get out of this cycle of, you know, how we're running capital? Like, is there a different way?
Great.
Just might be worth looking at.
So in the creation of a subcommittee, you guys have to vote to create the subcommittee, and then the chair is able to appoint.
Oh, God.
Um,
Any volunteers?
and then
Appoint
what,
himself, I'm just
what
wondering.
we would do
I have a
is,
nomination.
so the subcommittee would be able to give feedback and recommendations to the whole committee, but they can't vote on behalf of the whole committee. So just a couple pieces there. And of course, the subcommittee is subject to legal law and everything else. So you just have to vote first to create it. And then Nick can appoint, and then you
Do we have to
vote
do the
to,
appointments tonight?
you guys, no, you don't have to. You could totally
Is that just?
have a conversation, and we could do
Yeah.
in the next meeting that we vote to appoint.
I think the first thing is if we're going to do it, and then I would hold off on any appointments, because I think it's let everyone kind of digest what's going on here. I think me and Jen can have a little bit further of a conversation in terms of like, how many meetings, when are they gonna be?
Well, I
you
think
know,
we have to set the expectations of what we're looking.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
then kind of say.
Exactly.
And the
Are you
capital
interested?
meeting's next week.
Yeah,
Correct.
so that will
Yeah,
change
so-
it. It wouldn't change the
And we
meeting.
can
but it's
next
still-
meeting that, yeah.
All right, so I guess the thing would be to entertain a motion to create a capital subcommittee.
So-
ASAP.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We will hold off on appointments and get some more information as far as what is actually going to be placed.
Sounds good.
Good. Sorry, next up is review and vote on superintendent's goals.
Okay, so I am sharing my goals for the upcoming school year with all of you for your review and hopefully approval. So the first one is around district improvement. It is in partnership with the school community, develop a comprehensive strategic plan that establishes a blueprint for success for all of Norton students. We are currently operating under Vision 2026, and with some of the information from my entry plan last year and some of the priorities that we're moving forward as a leadership team, I think it's a good opportunity and time for us to update the strategic plan. So the goal is by October to establish a working group of community members and really look at the mission, vision, and core values of Norton Public Schools. That is something that we really honestly have not looked at in a number of years. It's been pretty consistent for quite a while. I don't know that anyone could tell you what the mission and vision or core values of Norton Public Schools is or are. To me, I think that's something that's important. If you're creating these, it's important for them to be authentic. By November 24, to survey staff, families, and students on the priorities for helping us move forward. And then my goal is to have a full plan to you by January of 2025 that would look at our systems and structures, resources, and creative solutions that would really give us some concrete goals and tasks for our leadership to take on as we move forward. As you've seen from previous years, we have benchmarks. So the first benchmark would be the completed survey data shared with staff, families, and with you as a school committee. A develop mission and vision to be shared with the community for feedback before we finalize that. So that will be some of the work of this committee to create a draft, share with the community, say, did we get it right? Are we missing something? And then also a draft strategic plan for you as the school committee by the end of January of 25. And again, that would be in a draft form for you to provide feedback and for, you know, anyone in our community to provide feedback before we kind of, you know, put it into play for the years ahead. The second one is our student learning goal. And this is something that is kind of in process in a couple of different ways across the district. But what we really need to do is take it to the next level. So utilizing a comprehensive district-wide data review process that will include local curriculum-based measures, observations of teaching and learning norm data, and state assessments to develop individualized student action plans. And that really ties with our IMTSS efforts. We're doing so much work right now across all 5 of our buildings around our multi-tiered systems of supports and making sure that students have access to interventions as they need them. What we really need to work on a little bit more is, number one, using all the data that we have in a really effective way, but also using data to help us stay accountable. So, you know, Dr. Ackerman and I met with the leadership team earlier today. We talked about our MCAS data that was just released that we'll be sharing with you guys at a meeting right down the road, and talking about, okay, it says this, but what does that actually mean when you're looking at scaled scores and how much of a difference is it? And the importance of being in classrooms and doing learning walks and saying, okay, we're seeing this in our data. What is the actual practice in our classrooms showing us? And how can we utilize the resources that we have? Like, we're, you know, no one person has all of the answers. We're so much better collectively when we share ideas. How can we do that? How can we develop a consistent review process with timelines for our grade levels to say, okay, in October, we always do this. In November, we do this. And so I'm talking around all of my key actions here, but really the benchmarks will be a data protocol publication and distribution with timeline for meeting and collection of data at each grade level. Data collection forms from learning walks with principals and other instructional team members. So not only are we going to be doing learning walks, but we're also going to be collecting data and sharing that with staff and with others. Like, we're seeing a lot of downtime or, you know, the breaks are too long, so we need to kind of keep that momentum up. And then also the calendar of that learning walk schedule, which we actually just developed earlier today. So that is the student learning goal 2. And then finally, I am still in the new superintendent induction program. I believe Dr. Wong will be coming to our next meeting to see you guys and check in and watch me in action. It's always fun when she, you know, joins our leadership meetings or our retreats and, you know, gives me feedback on my performance. It's not awkward at all.
She doesn't give you an A++ after last year, then I don't know what to tell you.
Well,
seriously. What a
so much
first
knocking
year.
on wood.
Yeah.
So again, it's the setup is very similar in year 2 to it was in year 1 in terms of in-person sessions and then remote sessions. One of the big things last year was my entry plan. This year is my strategy, and then which will be developed into the full-blown strategic plan. And then Dr. Wong and I actually meet every other week virtually, which is great because I'll be like, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell, like, can you believe this story? And it's a great sounding board, and she's given me a lot of really great advice over the years. So that is goal 3.
Questions?
With your learning walks, are those announced, like, to the staff, or is it like?
Sometimes yes and sometimes no, right? I think it's really important for us to share with the staff what we're looking for, right? Because if you're saying, hey, these are the things that we're focusing on this month, we're going to be in and out of buildings. It's important for them to know what you're looking for and for them to be able to show you know, their best self. And if they can't do that when they know you're coming, then that answers other questions, right? I try to be in buildings a lot each week and like visiting classrooms. And a lot of times those informal visits are really great too, because you see things that it's not the horse and pony show.
Yeah.
And so
And
it's a
natural
lot more,
environment.
it's a lot more authentic often. So it's typically a combination. Sometimes when I go and visit schools and the principal's available, we'll walk together. But often I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, you guys do your thing. You've got plenty of work to do. Yeah, but sometimes we will, if we have the opportunity. So a little bit of both.
I had a quick question. So, I think it was like at the end of last school year, you gave us a, few pages on like everything you saw, areas of growth. Yes, right? Okay. So one of the areas of growth, I think you had mentioned like looking into screen time for kids and like that kind of, is that part of this in like things that you're still looking into?
So those will be part of the whole process through our learning walks and strategic plan. Karen and I worked super closely together for so many years, and we always feel that it's so, that the tool is not important. It's what you do with the tool that matters the most. And so there are times where we're doing things that don't need to be done for the sake of, whether it's using technology, we don't want to use technology for technology, right? Students still need to hear an adult read a book to them. Like, that is so important for a developing reader. Like, I like it when people read to me, right? Those things are really important, and that's going to be part of the strategic plan process. And how do we take more into the next level? Like, how do we get better? And, you know, we're gonna have some super exciting things to share with you guys from our MCAS data. And then we're also going to have some things that we're like, yeah, this isn't good. We need to work on X, Y, and Z. And those conversations are already happening, and at the district level, at the building level. We're good. I want people to have that sense of urgency to be better. We're all growing as learners. That's really important.
Any other questions? Sorry. I think the only thing I had, which I know Sherry, you were chair last year. I know we have to fill out a review for the state.
Yes.
But this is much easier now.
Yes. Huh?
This is gonna be easier now,
Why?
because you can see the three goals now.
That
Yeah,
was-
we-
that was
yeah,
simple
those-
last year. Yeah.
No, I thought that was really difficult to figure out what the three goals were.
Oh, because I labeled them differently.
Yes,
I
yes.
labeled them
Yes.
district improvement,
Yes.
student learning,
Yeah.
professional
So now I'm
practice.
like, oh, no, this is so
Yes.
much easier
Same as
now.
form.
It's right here.
Well, and again, I'll do this, last year, I think I gave you guys an update roughly in like January. And then I gave you an update again, and like right before you were going to do the evaluation. And last year, the way we did it was so that we did it before the election so that people could
Yes.
provide that feedback. So that's really up to you and to the committee on how you want to do that again. But I'll provide updates as well. But it's funny because I didn't really think about that last year when I was doing it, because again, like I did it differently for Joe. But yeah, I'm glad that makes it easier for
Well,
me.
it's all delineate, even if we wanted to change
Well,
how
that
we
was,
do it.
that's exactly
but
what I was gonna kind of bring
This
up.
was, this is
Yeah.
more working space.
I feel like, I think we should definitely do it, middle of April, because I feel like, having a new member on, you automatically lose someone, so 20% of the committee or possibly 40% of the committee might not be able to review the superintendent if the, either don't run or
Yeah,
lose an election.
That's
So,
why we backed it up.
Correct.
It's just the
Yes.
absence, always that first member, like. I was
yeah, I'm gonna abstain, which,
Yeah.
I get, and then I think to the review, the state review that they give us, I think we should fill it out by law, do what we need to do, but I also think as a school committee, we should maybe look at revamping, so we can give actually Jen some actual feedback.
Yes.
I sent my own last year because I was like, this is what I think. Poor Sherry, but like, yeah, but I'm like, I'm filling out a state form and I'm like, whatever I'm going to fill out on this.
You
form.
want the state to change a form?
You don't, I don't, that's what I'm saying. We'll do it between the five of us, I think. But like the state form, yeah, here you go. This is not helping Jen in any way, shape or form, because I can't, there's nothing to write. It's just, here's this, oh yeah, that went well, So I kind of did my own little thing or whatever. But I do think if we look into something along those lines, because I feel like the best thing for you is to kind of hear us and kind of, it's more of a real life conversation, if you will, like, hey, here's your review. This is what we kind of think, this is going well. We'd like to see, because everyone's going to have their own opinion on screen time or recess or whatever it may be. That like, hey, we'd like to maybe see this and highlight it. And then I think you could take those reviews and then put it into what goals we're looking for next year as well. So.
Well, I will let you guys decide how you want to do that.
Yes.
We do have to
We do,
submit
yeah.
specific
Yes.
data to the department. They don't get the form, but they get all your scores. So.
So we will probably do both and take a little bit of extra time doing that because I think it's super.
You can even set up a quick Google form for Jen directly.
That's what I'm saying, exactly. Yeah, that's it, yeah, exactly.
Based off of this.
Correct. Agreed. Cool. Anything else on that? Sorry. Number 11, revisit and vote on town. Oh, sorry, I just checked off.
Donation.
Sorry.
Yeah, you have to
Sorry,
vote on my
sorry.
goals.
Sorry.
Because otherwise I'm just doing whatever I want.
No, you said.
Skip that, skip the next one. All right, so I will entertain a motion to approve Dr. O'Neill's superintendent goals.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Okay.
5-0. Now we'll go to 10. Acknowledge and vote to accept a cash donation.
So we had a very generous family recently make a donation to our Little Lancers preschool program. The donation is $1,001. And at first we double checked to make sure
That
it
was my first question.
wasn't like wasn't like a tuition payment. And no, it was very much a donation and they would like it to go to our preschool program. So we are super thankful, extremely generous.
Is there
And
significance to that?
I don't know.
As soon as I got the packet, I'm like.
I know.
No division in my head.
I don't know. I have no understanding of why it would be that amount, but we're super grateful. And I know that our preschool program can use these funds and it will be used very, very well. So thank you to the Patel family.
Did the,
Is it a former teacher?
No, I'm looking at the penmanship. It looks like a teacher's.
It's a beautiful penmanship.
I know, I love it.
Mhm.
It's awesome, thank you.
so like when someone, this is more for my standpoint, I guess, because when someone donates something, and you just say you can put it anywhere, we can decide where that money goes. Obviously, if he said Little Lancers, it has to go to Little Lancers.
Yes. Yep.
But I mean, we could use this as supplies, we could use it as.
Yeah, we have a unrestricted gift account and typically what we'll do is we'll let it sit there until we really need it. And so sometimes, we've had people donate in the past when we had a lot of school lunches that were not being paid. We've had people donate in the past to assist students with fees for AP testing. So we're
Awesome.
super grateful to the community.
So thank you to the Patel family, but I do.
Oh, it is a parent.
It is a parent. Okay,
Yep.
good. It is a parent, so let's speak to the team. And obviously we do have to vote. I'll entertain a motion to accept $1,001 to our Little Lancers program. Moved by Dan and seconded by Audrey. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Now we'll get to number 11. Revisit and vote on town meeting article.
So we are just looking to revisit the article of the supplemental funding for this fall town meeting. We previously had $160,802 that we were going to request. And based on new conversations and information provided, we were going to revisit seeking additional.
Where do we want to start?
Good idea.
All right, so I think just for clarity purposes, 168.02 is from our chapter 70 funding, which increased $74 per pupil in our schools.
Correct.
That money from our admin recommendation was for $68,500 for a new special ed out of district. And then the other one was anticipated homeless transportation of $92,302, correct?
Correct. And I think, even in the last few weeks since we've talked about this, I think the majority of it at this time will likely go towards special education costs. And if we needed to go back in the spring for homeless transportation, we're kind of in a place where we would do that. But as for those of you who were here last year when I was showing you on a week-to-week basis, how much these placements can change and how much student need can change, it's just a revolving door. So we think the large majority of that will go towards special education costs at this
So
time.
I guess my question before we get into the weeds on this a little bit, with the homeless transportation costs, that billing, is that something that like I know like in the past, we've done like a transportation request at fall town meeting. The bill for the homeless shelter, like when is that paid? Is it monthly, quarterly, or is it end of the year, close the books, here's your bill?
It's unpredictable. It's based on the vendor, so we go out and get quotes for the cheapest ride, essentially, and it could go anywhere from a month to the whole year.
And
So
there's
you
no
really
way
don't
we
know.
can use our internal buses?
It depends on where the students are going. So ultimately, our internal buses are providing transportation to our special education students who are going to specialized programs in the district and require that mode of transportation, or to out-of-district placements in some rare occurrences. We need all those placements, we need all those buses here. We might be transporting a student from Norton to Cambridge. And so therefore,
And we also cost share with the district that they are going to or from. Well,
All right, so I think the first key piece of this is that is money that is not involved in the town's free cash. This is money that is given to us by the state. I do not quote me on this number, but I believe that number was $282,000 that Norton got. $160,802 is directly tied to our pupils. So that money would basically come in, that was basically owed to us, if you will, correct?
Yeah, once the state budget closed, that was the number.
Correct. Where does all right, so I think that is one.
so we're already asking for the 16802.
Correct.
So anything that we're discussing tonight would be over and above
Okay, so I think.
that amount.
Go ahead, sorry.
Before we get started, do we need, with whatever we go into with this, do we need a separate article for what we're going to request in the next 10 minutes?
No.
Or is it just listing out on this? Like if it's $100,000 for the water heater, we would just say at town meeting, extra $100,000 water heater, just as an example. Like we're looking to list.
Yeah, we would just change the amount.
Just,
Okay.
let's just not confuse people, because water heaters on capital. Bad example, but yes, yes. So I guess, so all right, so that's that money. The next one would be the Norton Middle School roof schematic design,
Mhm.
which we have discussed a little bit. And then obviously Dr. O'Neill also brought up at FinCom to get a roof design company, basically to look at this and figure out what are we looking and how much it's gonna cost, and it's, if you will, the initial stage of what we need to do.
Yeah.
And we needed to do that for MSBA.
And in order to get hopefully some type of money from MSBA, this is kind of the first step that we need to do.
Yep.
So I think an additional, you said $50,000 for the design? 30.
So
But we have to
the
give-
way the finance committee voted on it the other night, it's up to $50,000
Up to 50,
for the
okay.
schematic design.
Okay.
So we are, the time, as I mentioned at finance committee the other night, we're kind of in a difficult position in terms of timeline, because we won't know if we've been accepted into the MSBA program until October 31st, 30th.
30th.
So
Yeah, Halloween.
in the event we're not accepted, what would happen?
It would
Kick
just
that money
go back to the town.
Okay, we're good there. Any questions on that? All right, so I think our next big piece here is, if anyone hasn't been paying attention, to put this in the nicest way possible, the town is sitting on $6.2 million in free cash. That is a significant amount of money that hasn't been there in the past. If you gave us a whole, go ahead.
This is where I want to get a little bit corrective when we talk about the free cash number this year, they anticipated $3 million. So I think collectively, our town leaders are saying the 6 million is the number. It's really only 3 million above what they were asking for. So it's 6 million as a total, but they expected 3 million to be there. So I just want to
Yes.
clarify that publicly.
3 million
That-
or 4.
The free cash anticipation is one number. That I believe was up to 3 million. They thought they were going to get once the state budget closed. The over and above that 3 million was interest and some property taxes on payments or whatever it was, or sales. So I think the false narrative is it's 3 million of unanticipated one-time funds,
Yes,
not 6 million as a whole.
yes,
So I want to just kind of put that out there. We're not saying we expected to get 3 million. Lo and behold, we have 6, but
correct, correct.
we never expected
Correct.
6.
And the town has always gotten free cash. I think since 2002 was the last year we didn't get free cash. In order to operate from town expense side of it without going into anything crazy, they're always going to have free cash, state reimbursements, turnbacks, whatever it may be, there's always going to be free cash. The 6.2, it's almost 6.3 is significantly higher than we've seen historically. So with that being said, and that was new information from our last school committee meeting 2 weeks ago. So I think after everyone's seeing that and seeing what kind of obviously the chatter on social media and what's going on, it's looking like to me, and I will use this as my opinion only, that the schools took the hit of our positions because of where we have to get our budget squared away. We can't wait until fall town meeting to get any money because we have September 1st, give or take, to start, getting into our schools and educating our children. Police, fire, highway, they do get the benefit of being able to say, hey, you know what? We can get by until October to fall town meeting to request additional funding for, certain type of areas wherever they may go. With that being said, the town also in turnbacks, turnbacks are money that has been allocated the year before and has been turned back to the town. That number is sitting at 1.3 million. I think everybody, regardless of what side of the override you were on and whatever, we don't want to be using too much of free cash to fund reoccurring positions, simply because that free cash might not be there next year. So if that money goes down to 3 million and we spent 4 million or 3 million on reoccurring positions, you lose it and now we're back in the same situation, we have been. What I personally, however, 6.2 is a big number. I think the schools can do something a little unprecedented here that we've never been able to do with a little out of the box thinking. And I think we should be looking at putting some of these positions back in. And by saying that, I think there's a whole lot of operational stuff that we're looking at possibly doing. How sustainable is it, I think, is the $1 million question. However, kind of what, individually, the school committee members have reached out to me about, some of the positions that they were, look at, how can we, look at these positions, talk to Dr. O'Neill, building principals, our senior leadership team. What does this mean and kind of how we can do it? What does it look like for the NTA contracts, and so on and so forth. So I don't know how we want to handle this. Do you want me to run through the positions first and kind of then go of what's the easiest and cleanest way?
So why don't I start with what our thoughts were, what our recommendations were, and then I'll go through the information that you guys requested in terms of additional positions. So the first thing that we talked about as a leadership team was our teacher leadership positions. We had some representatives here from the Norton Teachers Association at our last meeting. We talked about the importance of these roles. So this would require some sort of a negotiation. But I was looking at potentially bringing back maybe half of those teacher leadership roles from now that, we're anticipating that would be in October. I believe it's 20th is the date of the town meeting. Please excuse me if I'm wrong, but we could potentially, thank you, 21st. We could potentially put those back into place by November 1st. And that would be a huge lift off of the principal's shoulders. It would allow us to bring teachers back into the conversation about teaching and learning that's going on a day-to-day basis and give them back some ownership in the work that we're doing. You all heard from them what a huge, responsibility they have. We're proposing half because I'm trying to be fiscally responsible and thinking about, okay, we have that in the budget this year. Could we potentially, keep that for the following year? The other item that we discussed as a leadership team is permanent building substitutes. So the last several years, we've had individuals where their entire job is to go to a particular school every single day, and they are literally the first line of defense for whatever happens, that, last minute call out, someone has a child that's sick and needs to go home. Those people work every single day in a teacher role because we always have, a need for subs. I equate the sub line to kind of like overtime for police and fire. You just can't predict what's going to happen. And that line can get really out of control. These positions, we would again start them around November 1st through the end of June. They do not receive benefits as part of their role. It is always a one-year position. We hire them year to year as we're able to. And over time, these people have rolled into paraprofessional roles and other roles within our school community, which is great. It's oftentimes a good opportunity for someone to get their foot in the door. So that was another proposal for us, and we weren't really sure where the committee was going to kind of stand on these. So that was our first initial pass at opportunities for increasing, looking at this free cash in a different light. One of the areas that Nick asked me to look into on behalf of the school committee is reinstating the elementary specialists to what their FTE was prior to. Sorry, let me go back for just 1 second before I move on. The curriculum leaders and the permanent building subs, that is a total of $136,071.
No.
Yes.
Why?
So the sheet that we shared with you, it's 14,200 for elementary curriculum leaders. It is 12,000 for middle school. High school is 28.
No.
And then,
That's $54,000.
but the 81,000 for the permanent.
Oh,
building
sorry,
leaders.
I missed that part, sorry.
Yep.
I thought you were just doing academic.
Nope.
coordinators. So academic coordinators is 54,171.99.
Yes,
Permanent building subs is 16,380 per building.
total of
Times-
81,900.
Times
Yes. So those are our initial recommendations for the total of 136,071. Next, I'm gonna go over to the elementary specialists. This would involve bringing, like our STEAM teacher at the LGN and Yale, she's currently at a 0.9, bringing her back to a 1.0. The art teacher currently at a 0.9, bringing her back to a 1.0. Library currently at 0.6, bringing that person back to a 1.0. And that is ultimately, it provides a lot of flexibility for the schools. One of the biggest challenges right now is that it's really difficult to run our school-wide intervention blocks. And I know that sounds crazy, but there's no flexibility in moving the schedule around when people are only there for a certain amount of the day. So you're not gonna say, okay, I need the art teacher to work from 8 to noon, and then I need her to leave for 2 hours, and I need her to come back at 2 and finish the day. Like, we're not that off. So,
That's a long lunch.
right? So in order to be able to, have the librarian at a 0.6 and have the STEAM teacher at a 0.6, it requires a lot of creative thinking on the part of building principals. So this would provide them the flexibility to be able to move the schedule around, get those intervention blocks in. And in a lot of cases, these specialists were also teaching an intervention block and being an extra set of hands during that time, like for Lancer learning time. Like our PE teacher, Mrs. McAllister, was taking a block of students and working with them on ELA or math. Those would be very easy to reinstate. The large majority of those positions, it's just simply saying, hey, next week come to work full-time instead of, the point, whatever. The only position that we would need to backfill in some way, shape, or form is our librarian. She's currently serving as a reading specialist as a 0.4 at LGN, one of our reading specialists over there. It was time for her to move to a part-time role, and we were able to make it work. So every time we can keep a valued staff member and give them that part-time opportunity. So that would be a little bit of finagling, but the total for those positions is $71,592. Okay, and now this is where we're gonna get a little bit more complicated. Nick had asked me for all of you to look into our world language program in grade 8, to look into the art teacher at the middle school, and then to look into the music teacher at the middle school. And I want to be really honest with all of you, just my thoughts and my concerns with some of these positions. To bring back the 2 world language teachers, I think the best we could even try to do would be January, in order to, Vinny's looking at me like he's gonna die. It would require a total overhaul of the middle school schedule. The way that the middle school schedule is currently set up, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, for the first time in several years, are actually all able to be on the same schedule because they have 4 core classes: math, English, science, and social studies. They have the ICE block, and then they have specials. Previously, it was a 7-class rotation for grade 8 in order to add that world language in. The prior year, it was a 7-class rotation for grade 7. With having everyone on the same schedule and also losing an ELA teacher in grade 6, a math teacher in grade 6, we had a special educator move from the middle school to the high school. All of those changes in those positions create a really delicate, I guess, for lack of better words, structure, which would need to be totally blown up in order to bring back world language. This would, one of the biggest concerns that I have is currently right now in 6th grade, we have one math teacher that's teaching 4 sections, and then another math teacher that is also a certified special education teacher. And they're doing both. They might be teaching 1 or 2 sections of math, but also teaching their special education students. Changing the schedule for grade 8, because it would only be grade 8 that would get world language back. Changing the schedule for grade 8 is going to change the availability of staff for grade 6 and grade 7. Tim's nodding his head because he knows, right? An example I used earlier today, Mr. LeConte's classroom is a multi-age specialized program, which means he has students in grade 6, in grade 7, and grade 8. So as of right now, Mr. LeConte and his staff are able to kind of divide and conquer across classrooms, across teams. Blowing up the whole schedule would need those specialized programs to relook at their schedules and to make sure that they can still cover the minutes that are required by students in the general education classroom based on their IEP. Additionally, we're servicing other students or sharing other staff, across grade levels and teams. We would need to go back and look at all of those other components. Finally, our 2 world language teachers still work here. They are, Mrs. Triani is serving as a Spanish teacher at the high school, and Mr. Carr is currently teaching 8th grade social studies. So they would, if we bring it back, if we reinstate their position, they would have first dibs at that role. So could we talk to the union and say like, hey, we're gonna try this? Sure. But ultimately, for Mrs. Triani to say, okay, I'm gonna go back, I'd like to go back and teach 8th grade Spanish again. we now have an opening and we need to find a new hire for here at the high school, which would disrupt the high school. And then we would need to find a new hire for social studies in grade 8, which would disrupt that structure. Never in a million years did I think I would be saying, I don't know if it's worth it. But I'll be really honest that this position here, I'm not sure if the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak, if we're just going to have to lay these people off again in June. So that's my biggest concern, and I want to be really honest with the committee, and ultimately at the end of the day, like, this is my recommendation to you. That one makes me a little bit nervous. Music, we could absolutely do. It's very easy. It goes right into the ice block. So band and chorus could go right back into the ice block. It would basically be a non-issue. Currently, when it comes to art, the way we just divided the specials is just by one less. So we could take a look at bringing the art teacher back. It would change the schedule a little bit in terms of dividing students, but it wouldn't be a complete overhaul that the world language would be. Considering those, so that would really be 4 staff members from January through June. We're anticipating that art and the music teacher would be a long-term sub new hire. And then the world language teachers would either be brand new hires, which can be challenging to find a French teacher. Or it would be backfilling where people currently are. I'm even thinking like Mr. Portway was here tonight. He's currently the business teacher. He used to be the Spanish teacher. Like that little domino effect that can happen. That's a lot more movement. So I think that's really important for you to know all of those factors as we're sitting here talking about it. Those 4 positions from January through June will be a total of $113,000. So if we think about, adding all of these positions together, the recommendations on the teacher leadership position, the permanent building subs, all of the elementary specialists back to, where they were, and then those 4 positions at the middle school, it is a total of $321,291 over and above the $168,802 that we had previously requested.
Jen, what was the number again? 321?
321, 291, 86.
So I guess my thoughts are a little shared, Dr. Runhill, and I think personally, no one ever wants to see 26, the net 26 people not here with us anymore.
Mhm.
I would be hesitant in my position now to add any new positions short of the long-term subs, at the school building. Because if the next budget, which is also likely to be challenging, those 4 people are the first ones gone. Because we didn't have them, we only had them for half a year, so that 100,000 or don't hold me, but whatever that 100,000 is right off the bat in the next season. And if we're starting to talk about the budget a little earlier internally, say we start talking about it in November, and we have an idea of what the year over year to keep the lights on and keep everything operational, whatever that number is, short of what we don't know what the teacher contract is. If we know kind of that idea in December, I'd still be hesitant to add people in January if we know the budget's gonna be that bad 6 months later in June. And I hate to say that because I know we lost some good staff. It doesn't sound like if we're adding back these programs, short of the ones that don't disrupt the schedule, that that's going to be a short-term benefit for a long-term problem. And that long-term problem is the budget. Short-term, I think adding these is a disruptor. I don't know what a half year of language is going to get for these kids versus something else, I'm like I said, I'm hesitant to add any what we consider permanent positions in the teaching world to a budget that we don't know what that's going to look like, or we don't know the full picture of what that's going to look like. But I would be instructing Dr. O'Neill and Christine, those positions we added in January, they're the first ones out the door. And I don't want to have to do that.
So Dan, can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Like, based on what you're saying, are you more just worried about the language component of it? Because the other one seemed to be an easier fix for the schedule.
I mean,
That was my, but let me just finish my other question, because I think this one is kind of an important one. Are we sure that next budget season is going to be difficult? Because we were pretty sure this one was gonna be difficult. And within the last week, we just found out about this increase after we made some significant serious cuts. So how do we, I mean, let's just talk about the elephant in the room, right? And I've asked Nick to, get a joint meeting sooner rather than later, because I think it's warranted, so we can figure out what happened here. Because I think we're trying to make decisions for this year based on what next year is going to be, and thinks that it was going to be just as devastating as it was this year, but lo and behold, here we are.
well, I guess I would answer that with just as my observation is this. We've started school and we're on day 8 by now, I don't know. Our budget starts on July the 1. We're the only department, so we can come back here next October and say, hey, we have the 3 million we anticipated, and maybe there's another 3 million next year. We can't think like that because our budget closes and then it reopens in the next fiscal year. We can't push stuff off. Like, we can't live in the realm of, oh, well, we'll pay for it at fall town meeting. We can't pay for staff at fall town meeting.
I
Just like we
understand
can't pay
that.
for staff in January.
Yeah.
Because the budget that we will set at April or whatever, comment or fall, at Springtown meeting is going to be different. It's going to be more than what we set for this year, but it's not going to be a significant increase because the finances haven't changed. Like, we can keep talking about free cash, but if the town leadership had a better plan to move forward, we wouldn't be having a discussion about talking about this free cash right now. Because they should be putting some of that away for the budget season next year. It's like a little savings account, but
Yeah.
everyone wants you to spend, put it out the door faster than we can get it.
Mhm.
And we have stressed in our budget season, we have to be forward thinking. We have a 5-year plan. We know what our needs look like. We're the only department that's kind of taken that action and done that. But I just can't, and I hate to say this, but I don't want to add a position that's going to be the first one on the chopping block, because our budget season, we have to get our budget done in the spring. We have to. We can't wait to see if we're going to have more money in the fall and think we can't anticipate another year of good free cash.
So I
because
think
we
what I
can't
was
operate
getting at more is communication. Because I feel like just based on meetings that I watched that there may have been some who knew what the free cash was gonna come back at sooner, certainly much sooner than we learned about it. So I think that's kind of where I'm going with this
Yeah,
question,
so-
is if there's, and I thought all those years ago, kind of starting the joint meetings, I thought that would be kind of the purpose of it, so that everyone was on the same page and moving forward, and oversight or whatever it is, I don't really know, because we haven't been in the room with people to kind of get that information. But my thought process is there a different timeline that we may know more?
I think it's a separate issue. When we're talking about our budget, we have to close our budget and then reopen it a day later. The problem is when we rely on free cash and our per pupil number, that's when the state closes their budget. We can't wait for the state to close their budget to close and open our budget. So we anticipate, we oversee the school department budget. We are given a number, we stay within that number, we live within that number. Our number this year was 4. We got 1%, we have 26 less staff. Now, we can't say next year, oh, well, if our keep the lights on numbers, 3% increase in our budget, or what was it last year? Almost 11%?
Yeah.
We know we're not gonna get 10% if that's to keep the lights
Yeah.
on. So if,
I mean, I see both sides of this. I mean, I think we all do. I mean, I didn't realize the language component of it and how that really changes the schedule, but you know, for me, I think the middle school was hit so hard this year that would I like to see these things back as well as the elementary specialists and the, you know, leaders and the, you know, all of that stuff. You know, yes, you know, part of me is, I don't know, maybe I'm just more willing to take that gamble because I feel like it's the right thing to do by our students. And just have way more dialogue. And I think that maybe, you know, between the finance committee, the select board and the school committee have way more conversations about what actually next year is gonna look like, because at the end of the day, what we just went through, we divided a town. You know, we are all neighbors, and at the end of the day, what got hurt the most are our students. And that's a really crappy thing. You know, and never mind the staff that, you know, was laid off. I certainly feel for them as well, but as an adult, you know, we do have other options that we can go and look for other jobs. Our students don't have options unless they choose to go to another school, which we do not want. So to me, you know, I don't know. I sit in the seat and I don't want to hurt our students. I don't want to hurt our kids. I don't want to hurt your kids. My kids are gone.
And I think,
You know?
I mean, I think too, with these positions that I guess those four, if you will, the two foreign languages, the art and music. We get a lot of bang for our buck. We're not bringing back, you know, some positions that, hey, they're not student facing, like those positions you're talking about affecting the entire school.
Yeah.
Obviously, foreign language is 8th grade, you know, but your art and your music coming back, you know, what is that, 522 kids over at the middle school, whatever it is, you know, every single one of those kids is going to benefit, you know? So, and quite frankly, I feel like I'm not even so much looking at the free cash and taking from there. Yes, we're going to have to take from free cash at the end of the day. I'm looking at that turnback number. We had $1.3 million in turnbacks. We as a school system gave back basically $300,000. However, $282,000 of that was from the train project rebates that we made the agreement with the
Yeah.
county. So even if you cut that number, cut that out, because we owed it, if you will, we had to pay our debt back, if you will. There's $1 million that this town didn't spend. Fire is going to get their stuff back. Police is going to get
Right.
their stuff back. I'm assuming here, I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, certain, because nothing's been approved yet, obviously. I'm assuming something from the senior center. I'm assuming highway might put in for their person back, because at the end of the day, we're not looking at, I'm not running back here and saying, we need all 26 positions back.
Right.
I feel like it bang for our buck. We know, we just saw the PBIS stuff around our middle school. We know we've been having issues in our middle school in terms of behavior and just the natural society way of middle schools in general, you know, is always a struggle. To put some of those creative things back, to give our 8th graders something to look forward to give our teachers back some leadership stipends and roles, to get our elementary schools to get their positions that they had last year. This is taking the doom and gloom of what we have seen for the last 7 months, getting us to a spot where we're looking at $321,000 on a $73 million budget. We're not putting all of our academic coordinators back because we understand that there is money and it can only go so far. I mean, just to highlight academic coordinators, we're talking, you know, 4 at the high school out of 9. We're talking 3 out of 7 at the middle school. We're talking 6 out of 11 at the elementary schools. Bringing back obviously the elementary specialist, if you will. The building sub obviously is a great idea because it also might save us a little bit of money from actual substitutes. So to me, we're getting a bang for our buck. And I agree with Dan. No one wants to do reoccurring positions. If we were sitting and we had $3 million in free cash right now, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, quite frankly. I feel like our kids got the shit end of the stick in a nice way to put it. That is me being very frank. They're the ones who got hurt. You know, yes, we lost our teachers, you know, hopefully, you know, they can go somewhere. Hopefully they can find another job. I'm not saying it's a great thing by any means, but the ones who got it the worst was our kids.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, the rest of town is going to go on. You know, without these positions, we're still going to educate. However, to me, this gives a glimmer of hope that us five are sitting up here saying, we heard from you academic coordinators. We heard from band and parents and students, you know, we understand, you know, the elementary specialist and what that does to a day, even if it's an extra 20 minutes in the PE class. You know, bringing back some of these positions gives our schools a little bit of extra hope. So yes, could we be in a situation like this in April? I said this to Jen earlier. If I was a betting man, I don't think I would take a bet that yes, we're going to be here or no, we're not. No one knows. We're staring at NTA negotiations that, depending on how those go, is really going to affect what we're doing with our teachers. We don't know. We don't have a contract with them. Like any business, your biggest money is going to be in your staff. You know, it's the same way we're looking at it here. So the sustainability factor to me is, can we do it right now? Yes. Is 6 months going to change the outlook of a you know, 8th grade student for foreign language? I don't know, but I can tell you, sure, it's better than nothing.
Well, I think that for music and arts though, like we just took stuff away from kids who maybe are not sports kids.
Yeah, of course.
So what do they have?
Right.
So that could be honestly a life or death situation for some of these kids,
Yes.
right? Where that's where they feel connected. That's, so to me, that's more of a serious issue, you know, language, you know, would I like to have it? Absolutely. But maybe are there other options that, you know, so I guess, Jen, my question for you is,
Can I just jump back and
Oh, sorry, go
first?
ahead.
And then like, here's my thing with the middle school and the world language. I don't do school scheduling. I can see it
Yeah.
being a nightmare. And I said this to Jen earlier as well. We were told last year of how these cuts are going to drastically affect our students. If we can't figure out in the middle school of how to flip the schedule, by January 2nd, we're going to have a new term. We're looking at term 3, 3 and 4. If we can't figure out between administrators, and again, I'm saying it's going to be a big undertaking to figure out this schedule. We have got to be, you can either have one or the other. You're either in this and you're saying, hey, this is drastically affecting and the juice worth to squeeze, or is the effort to change that schedule going to be worth it? To me, if I'm sitting in Vinnie Hayward's role, I'm looking at this saying, wait a second, the school committee has finally said, let's help this out. How can we help? What can we do? I'm looking at this as I'm going to put in every effort for the next, it's not like we're dropping this position on for November 1st. You've got 3 months to say, hey, how do we do this schedule? How can we make this work? I know there's a ton of moving parts between IEPs and special ed and that stuff, but think about the general run-of-the-mill student who has lost what could have been, you know, music or art as a livelihood, or the Spanish or the French class. We can give them that hope back for $321,000. To me, it's just, I don't think this is a crazy ask. I think on the level of, you know, support that we will probably see at town meeting, I honestly think the devil's advocate is going to say, why didn't you ask for more?
That's my thing, like, why are we not asking for more? So when we were going all in for the 6.5 as the override, refresh my memory, what was we 5-year plan? So we knew at 6.5 million that we were gonna be okay for 5 years.
Yes, at roughly between 2.5% to 3.5% increases, moderate increases over the next 5 years. But I think, I just want to come back. Audrey, you finish and then I'll remember what I was gonna say.
So my thought is, I feel like we should be asking for more, so we make sure we are okay for next year. Like if we can at least project a little bit. If we are gonna bring back these positions, can we look and see to make sure we're covered? Just, I know it's gonna be hard with the teacher negotiations and all that stuff, but
That's the big wild card factor is the teacher negotiations. We can have an idea what that number of increase is going to be. However, this money is not automatically going to be in next year's increased budget. So like, for example, we got a 1% budget. If we ask for everything under the sun and it equals out to another 1.5%, we're not going to start next year's budget process with a 2.5% increase year over year. It's every budget season is a clean slate. So what we have now, and we were accused of this in the past because, you know, We have town leaders that didn't believe what the school department was doing. When we went for money in the fall, what we got at budget season was, well, that's not your total increase you got because you got money in the fall, which was always agreed upon on that free cash number. So it's just that short-term memory that people like to point out that, oh, well, we could, the only things, we've been selective with what we could push off in the fall time meeting passes. A lot of it was transportation, some technology, things like that. We've never, I don't think, to my knowledge, put in a position or done anything this drastic as a result of the fall town meeting budget. So when we think, our budget's right around, they're gonna have their initial conversations about the budget next month. So, I mean, I'm not gonna put Christine on the spot and say, what does a 1% budget look like for next year? How many positions less is that going to be? It's just, I'm just hesitant to upheave, a schedule for 6 months. If they're easy positions that like the band and whatever the other one. I forget.
So you're saying no to
You're
like,
just saying.
I'm saying
to
no to
world
the
language.
world language,
to world
because
language.
that's gonna be an upheaval, not necessarily just for eighth grade,
Yeah.
but as we saw, it's gonna trickle down into the other
That,
grades.
that I can understand. And I get Nick's point too. But if it is such a drastic change and we're not able to sustain it, that is a concern of mine. So I think that was what I was gonna ask you, Jen, and Christine. And I know it's so hard to predict, but like if we brought everything back that we're talking about right now, minus the language for eighth grade, what does that look like for come April? I mean, can we even predict that at this point? No.
I mean, ultimately, we have some guesstimates, right, based on like if we did. And we also have to be really careful because we're going into a negotiation.
Yeah.
And we can't make assumptions because then we're not bargaining in good faith, right?
Yep.
And so we have some assumptions. So like ultimately, and we also have to remember all of these things are prorated, whether they're prorated to November 1st. So something that's costing you. Sorry, I'm just gonna look at my, no, I'm good. Something that's costing us, $28,000 now is gonna cost us $68,000 next year because it's a full year, right? So, the initial list that we talked about, like those the curriculum leaders, the teacher leaders, and the permanent building subs, that's roughly between, 160,000. If we are moving that over into our budget for the following year. The, elementary specialists, the art, the music, the world language, that is an additional, 385 to 395. So it's a little bit different than saying our whole ask this year is 321 versus adding it to the FY 26 budget would be closer to 500, a little bit over.
And that's with trying to keep everything we have now.
That is just for those positions. That is just for what we're talking about adding back. That is just that. The concern that I have about world language, and I said this to Nick earlier today. The cuts that we did last year, those 29, which turned into 26, those cuts were devastating. But they were devastating to me personally for a lot of different reasons. I led teaching and learning for Norton Public Schools for 12 years. The coaches, the interventionists, the expansion of world language. I had my hands in all of that as the director of curriculum, as the assistant superintendent. So it's not just losing people in positions, it's losing what we built. So for me to sit here and to say, I don't know that we can do the world language, and these are the reasons why. It goes against everything I believe. But you didn't hire me to be your teaching and learning person. Hired me to be the superintendent. I'm trying really hard to look at it from that global perspective. And so I think adding back the world language at the middle school, yes, the schedule is going to be a nightmare. We're not afraid of that work. I don't know that we can add back the world language, change the schedule without needing to hire other additional staff. So looking at the math teacher we lost, the English teacher we lost. Can we still do this without those people? Can we still do this without that special educator that their position moved from the middle school to the high school? Bless you. That's why, you know, you look at it and you look at the number and you're like, oh, 56 grand, that's not a lot of money. It's not. But I don't know that we could actually make it happen for that amount. I think there would be, as
So it's-
Christine said, it just kept, you know, getting bigger and bigger. I think that might be the case here too. And until we really roll up our sleeves and get into it, we don't know, is it going to be, we're gonna add world language and we have to add this position? We have to, like, just to make it work.
So if world language is off the table, just push that aside for a little bit. If we add back band and art, minimal,
Yeah, art's a
As
little
opposed
bit
to
more
just going to the
complicated, but
arts.
band is super easy. We could do that. You know, band is super easy. Art's a little bit more complicated, but again, it's not,
but they fall within the same plug and play ice period or whatever.
art would be part of the specials rotation. So that would be just realigning that piece. It would not be the world language situation.
Can I just jump in here? 'Cause
Yes, please.
We are using them interchangeably. We're talking about a music teacher. So music would be for all the students.
No, we have a
Band.
music teacher. So we currently have a music, so middle school already had it, we used to have 2 music teachers.
Okay.
So the way that that worked is that there were times where one teacher would teach music as the special. And the other music teacher would be teaching either band or chorus during the ice block because of the way the schedule rotates. So currently, right now at the middle school, all students are getting general music or will get general music at some point during the specials rotation. Adding,
3 days, used to be.
I think it's 30, Tim.
I think it's like 30, 35,
So it has
36 right
changed.
now.
Yeah, so we
Been a
went,
while.
we went to lesser rotations for longer periods of time. So adding that music teacher back, give us 2 music teachers again. And it would give us the flexibility to offer band and chorus during the school day, in addition to them already getting the general music as part of their rotation. That makes sense?
I think we had a question.
She answered that, we're good.
Nope, we're good.
Thank God, Rich. I didn't even know the question.
Um,
Go ahead.
I don't know, I think. You know, would I like to see it all come back? Absolutely, but it's almost like the academic coordinators, right? Like we can't do all of it, so we're doing some of it. So I think for me to have the subs, the academic leaders, the elementary specialists, music, middle school art, the middle school. I feel comfortable with that, but I also need to just say that I think that we need to have way more meetings and way more touches with the other boards. That we are like, because now I can almost guarantee you that question's gonna be asked
What's that?
of like our town manager and, you know, like, what are we looking at? Like, I think that we all just assumed if there was more money that, if there was a inkling of more money coming in, that somebody would have said something. Right, right, yeah, transparency, communication. I think that, you know, now that this has kind of happened and everyone's kind of shocked by it, it's, we also need to do a better job of asking the question, right? No question is silly, I guess, because who knew we needed to ask that?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think in a general grand scheme of things, just like us or FinCom or the select board, we only know what we're told.
Yeah,
So
Right.
like, I mean, I'm not accusing Jen of this, but if Jen said to us, hey, this is what we have, this is what we're going on, we're trusting our
Yeah.
superintendent of schools to be giving us the correct information, you know?
Right.
And then that's what we're making decisions of. So I think it's a lack of transparency, but I think a lot of people across town for sure, but I think some people on these boards have kind of been like, wait a second here, we just lost a whole lot of trust, which is
Yeah.
never a good thing.
right,
You know, because now, like you said, you're opening up that, now we gotta question everything, you
Right.
know? And I totally, please second that thing. I mean, that's exactly what it is.
yeah,
Well, and I think the other disparaging thing is it's just another example of schools have felt tremendous pain because of the way the budget has worked out. You know, I mean, you said it, a lot of the other departments that had stuff, you know, possibly losing, they're whole. We're still not whole. It would take us years to become whole. And unfortunately, even with, you know, this isn't even starting that. This is just, to me, this is a Band-Aid. You know, to try and make it work. I mean, short of the world language, I would agree with the other things that we wanted to add. I think world language it would be too chaotic to try and redo those schedules because, I mean, it's just, I just don't see a huge benefit for a half of the year's worth of language. You know, I mean,
But we also don't know that these people are gonna just jump back into this position. We could just highlight.
Well, I guess that's my-
It would still require, so the numbers that we shared with you assumed that we'd be backfilling with a new hire, right? So, because regardless, whether they go into a world language classroom
Yeah.
or they go into a business classroom at the high school, it's still gonna need to be a new hire. We don't have extra people hanging around. The thing that just makes me a little nervous is what else would we need to backfill? Vinny texted me, we would have to add some paras over at the middle school if we were to change the schedule. So it wouldn't just be the world language hires. It would be, we would have to factor in the cost of doing business in order to make that work
Could
for
we factor
students.
that in?
That's
into
great.
this number? It could be, it's an assume, right? Like
well, I
can we
mean,
get that done before we can put it as an earn?
I don't know that you could get a schedule on the next.
well, because I think the other thing.
Just because I know that the middle school worked on this, they saw the writing on the wall. They were like, we need to be prepared if people aren't coming back and that this is what is going to be, we're going to be looking at. They started redoing the schedule in March last year. And it's, as much as we say it can't be that difficult, it is.
Let me jump in on one thing.
Can I just jump on that? I think the issue here is like, they make a change to the specialist schedule or the rotations, right? Then we have to know what that is in order to then go to each one of our specialized programs and say, where is that kid going to be? In
How do we
comparison,
staff
and how do we staff that, right? So right now, the luxury, I guess, of the way we have to schedule is that Tim, like, the kids are all on the same time frame. What was awful,
Last
just gonna be straight up awful, was that, you know, Tim would have a para in any other school, that para could do A, B, and C. But because there's a 10 or a 15-minute difference, you can't then say, okay, take Tim, go cover, go cover this person. And then at this time, you're gonna switch to this person because somewhere in there, somebody's not getting their hours. That's the complexity of it. We're gonna have to know all of what's happening with the general ed schedule. And then we gotta break each one of our individual program schedules down by each individual para and staff member. The other person that I think is, the other thing that could impact SLPAs, CODAs, those folks, because right now, we have their schedules, we have that all covered because the kids, and it's split between two buildings, right? But we have it so the kids are covered. Again, we know that they're gonna be free this block at this time from this time to this time. If you start saying a half an hour here, a half an hour there, now I can't cover we can't cover those, right? You know, Christine, you know what I'm talking about, right? You can't, and then that impacts your ability to go to the other building. And especially if it ends up being a rotating one, that makes it even worse. So that's all, so that's why I'm saying, like, it goes beyond those people, especially when you start talking about covering IEPs and specialized programs.
Yeah.
And that would take, it took months to figure that out, you know, because each piece then impacts the next piece.
Yeah.
It's a domino effect.
So you can do it, but it's a long-term process.
So
Are you good, Rich?
Yeah, I guess just one other thing, that's way more important than what I was gonna say, but, I didn't even realize that. But if you technically, like hypothetically, since we're talking hypothetical situations, if the 2 world languages came back in middle school and the 2 teachers took their positions back.
Yep.
That would leave an opening at the high school, that would potentially, the high school schedule that is then affected, right?
Yes.
Would it be not? So now you're talking all of what Mr. Cersei just said, and everything you all have said, you're adding in the high school too, which is,
Let me, and that was my next question.
Yeah.
We can, no, wait, sorry. You could negotiate an MOU or an MOA, whatever, probably an MOU, to say, Sure, could you say, we're using these two positions? Have the union sign off on it, saying we are hiring new people. Come July 1, we would open these positions back up for the union. For then if, let's just use Bobby Portway. Mr. Portway says, hey, you know what? I actually do want to go teach 8th grade again. Now we know we're filling the high school business job July 1 rather than January.
Potentially, yes, that doesn't solve any of them.
Yeah, it
Correct.
doesn't solve
Okay.
Mr.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
entire spiel, that's
so-
just, yeah,
I
no,
think-
this is much more important.
Person teaching Spanish here goes back to the middle school. But theoretically, Mr. Portway could go back to teaching Spanish.
Yes.
Then we have to hire to replace
Well,
Mr.
that's why I,
Yeah.
to
Just
me,
to cover his
correct.
classes.
It's dominoes.
But then you could get into, does that person, can they teach the business classes? Can they teach? It's just really, to me, that it's the long-term or I shouldn't say, the long-term 6-month vision. I don't think the two world language positions are easy to solve with this request. Where the other ones, like the academic coordinators, they're current employees. And you mention this, you're talking just flipping some times. Those, if they're already here, I think we can easily work within our confines of, our scheduling, but just to add the 2 new positions, it's trickle down effect.
So 2 different pieces for all of you for context. Last year, we got a 1% raise. That was $347,000, $347,064. We're talking about these positions being more than what we got for our whole increase last year. And that's not with negotiating a new contract, giving out raises, like that is literally it's already gone. If we were to only get 1% again next year. I hope to God we don't only get 1% next year, but again, we just don't know. There's no way to predict. The other thing is that if we want to go and ask for more, because we feel like we lost so much, there are other things that we could talk about and we can consider. Yeah, so I mean, Nick just spoke about like middle school and how we watched the whole PBIS thing. Like one of the most forward-facing positions in that middle school is the dean of students. Tanya Benoit ran all of the PBIS stuff. She handled all of that support with students. She did all of the recognition programs. She brought kids that were struggling over to the high school to get an idea. Like some of our high-risk students come over, meet teachers, meet the paraprofessionals to be working with, like see the wood shop, see the art room. Like that was a super forward-facing position. There are other positions that we could talk about that may not, have a huge domino effect and upend everything, but also still be forward-facing with students and consider.
So kind of keeping on that track, if we bring Miss Benoit back, I assume she went back to the classroom.
Yep. So you would still be you would be hiring a long-term sub.
I'm hesitant on using this to bring back an admin position.
And again, totally understand. Technically, it's like she's a unit A position, right? So, but I think there are other conversations that we can have.
I'm wondering if the teachers have brought up anything about like, I think the long-term sub or the building subs, I think it's a fantastic idea. But have any of the programs talked about, last year we had a floating para in wherever, or we had this available to us, like, are they feeling it? Have those discussions been brought up? Are they feeling it? Are the reading or math interventionists that they had and they don't have this year? Like, I know maybe those don't impact as many teachers or as many students because they're seeing a smaller number, I assume, but I don't know, like, my son was brought up the other day and Mrs. Sunderland he was like, oh yeah, I read with her all the time. And I was like, you did? So like, I think there's those pieces too, where they were going into classrooms and they were helping in the centers, even though maybe the students didn't have that particular IEP service, or you know what I mean? Like,
and that was always the first line, right?
Right.
That was the first thing that we would do to work with students, because oftentimes students can be over-identified because you do not have those interventions in place. And when there's no interventions in place, special ed is the only game in town. And that's the biggest challenge. And that's why you know, I said earlier, we fought for these positions for so many years. Like, even when you think about, you know, Nick did a great speech on the first day of school. Who were the two people he mentioned? Christy and Gia. Like, our coaches were so integral and supportive of the Office of Teaching and Learning. There's definitely, you know, other ideas and options. And what I would say is, you know, perhaps it's a bigger conversation for us.
I think so too. But I think
So-
we're out of time. But what I was gonna
Yes,
say,
right, like-
we don't have time.
I know, like,
Yeah.
we have to put.
We need to let them know by the end of the week.
So I
What we
think,
want our number to be.
I think we need to take it this way, to be completely honest. I think we need to do one position at a time, because I feel like we're getting a little bit split here regardless. I think if we, let's go one position at a time. Yes or no. Vote on it, and then get back to the conversation of if we're not gonna do a foreign language, do we want to look somewhere else?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That way, I think that way we can kind of move along here, because I feel like.
Yeah.
from getting a read, I feel like we're all on the same page with some of these, and maybe a
Yeah.
few others we're a
Yeah.
little split on.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
All right, so I think then, to just be transparent, we're gonna read these as easy as possible. Let's start with the academic coordinators. The total cost is $54,171.99. That would bring back 4 at the high school level of the 9.
So we
sorry, go ahead.
likely will need to negotiate this.
Okay.
So what I would recommend is, like, let's have the conversation that we're gonna keep it within that price
Got it,
point.
fair.
So whether that is bringing them all back and it's a reduced stipend and people are willing to do that,
Can we
I have
prorate
to
a
go,
stipend?
we haven't passed. It's all about an MOA. So, but I need to go into it with good faith bargaining. So we can't bring back the entire,
So don't put a number on it, put
I would say, you know,
a numerical. not
yes,
necessarily.
yes. And then that way, like we're saying, it's a little bit less than 50% of what the stipends are currently. Because I'll need to go through that process.
Okay, so academic coordinators, we put a maximum of $54,171.99. Recommendation from the school committee would be to make sure we spread those out as best as possible across elementary, middle, and high school levels. I think that's fair. Does anyone have a motion for that?
Can't vote on it.
Oh, we can't
It's not
vote,
on
so
your
that's what we're
agenda.
doing.
No, and I would just say, are we all in agreement?
Yeah.
We're all in agreement?
Yes.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay. Check. Sorry, Donna, this is all new for all of us, I think.
Jonathan, I need to watch again.
Yes.
I have to watch it. It's okay, it's all right.
All right.
Somebody text us, what she said.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next one up is the elementary specialist. This would be,
Oh, did you want to do the permanent
Permanent
building?
building, so she
Permanent building, so.
well, I do have it on my list, sorry, but it was just my next one. on my list. All right, so let's go to permanent building.
Got his own list.
I do.
You're not going by
That's
our.
what you just said.
I like to see cost per projection. Anyway, next one would be the permanent building subs. Our recommendation would be to bring 1 back at each school. The total cost of one of those subs is $16,380. We would put a max of that of 5 buildings, $81,900. All those in agreement?
Yes. Agreed.
Agreed.
No,
Next.
they don't have to do this, but I think they
Oh,
want to.
no, I just meant like the max. Like,
Oh, yeah, you don't have to do it.
because we can like.
We can figure it out.
Because I.
We're just
think
looking
it's
at
a number.
numbers from a number.
You know what I
We
mean?
just need the whole number.
Yeah.
And but you guys want to say, like, with these, this is what we want the money to go to.
Yes.
Got it.
What do you mean by the whole number? Like usually the 81,900?
No, like.
No, we're just gonna
it's
need to
like-
add it all together and be like,
Right.
Gotcha, yes. I'm,
$6 billion.
yes,
Yeah.
which is
Right.
completely fine. I want to do it for our standpoint, so we're all on
Yeah.
the same page and everybody
Understand.
who's at home
Oh.
watching can understand. We're not just throwing in
So then.
$321,000 and we're
When we
just.
come
oh,
back to
yes.
the vote, you'll get your final number.
Yes.
Correct, yes, yes.
We're
Okay,
gonna tally.
sorry. Next one is elementary specialist. Hopefully bringing those back to the 23-24 level would be our recommendation. The total on that is $71,592.11. All those in agreement?
Yes.
Yes,
I
yes,
agree.
yes. All right, and then the next one, let's go Norton Middle School music teacher. We'd be prorated from January 2nd to June 30th for $28,406.94. All those in agreement? Yes, 5. Middle school art. Same cost, $28,406.94. All those in agreement.
Yes.
I think we have to loop these two together because we're not gonna give 8 purple a foreign language teacher and 8 white no. So I will say both foreign language teachers, which is a total of $56,813.88. All those in favor?
No.
No.
Yeah.
I will also be a no. 5.
agree, no.
All agree no.
And again, I hope you guys know how much it kills me for me
Yes,
to
yeah,
give
that's
you the
one of us.
recommendation.
I mean, just knowing all that, especially when it involves the powers with the IP and all
Yeah.
that gets into,
Trickle
that's,
down.
that's a whole
Right.
other.
This is why we did it this way.
Right, and I will say to my world language teachers, like, I value this, I value these
Yes.
roles, I value this experience for our students. It's just not something that we can do in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, as we know more about what our budget is going to look like next year, perhaps that's something that we say, this is really important for us to try to bring back
Yeah.
and make that a priority.
Now, when anyone, since of that number, you've now removed $56,000. Is there anything else because of the complexity of the foreign languages? It's not that we do not want to bring them back, the complexity for the 6 months. I think we all are on the same page. Does anyone want to add something else or talk about another position? Since that obviously wasn't in our original thought process.
We go back and look at those interventions.
Watch that, isn't that the elementary specialist or am I thinking something?
No, it's
No,
different.
no, elementary
So we
specialists
also
are like
cut,
art, music, yeah.
so in our part of our staff reductions, we removed a reading and a math interventionist.
Yep, so the reading interventionist was at the Yale School, in grades 4 or 5. If I was going to give you a recommendation, I think perhaps math at the primary level would be where I would go first. Just because we have a reading interventionist at the Yale School, who does a great job.
Oh, I'm sorry, can you start over? So the reading, I don't know.
I'm tired.
Have a reading act.
Okay, so.
What would you, if we were gonna bring back a math and a reading, where do you think you would put them?
Math and reading?
And you know the
Bring back one of
MCAS
each.
results,
Yes, one of each.
and we do not have that information yet. So I also would, yeah.
Well, I mean, we don't have to put Dr. O'Neill on the spot of wish.
No, I'm not saying.
So,
We just
so
want to remember.
what I would say is if we thought that bringing back a reading interventionist and a math interventionist was really important. I think what I would perhaps suggest is make that an elementary reading interventionist and elementary math interventionist. And let's not specify where they belong, because we could put somebody in one place, or we could share a staff member along the way as well. And bringing the library back to full time, we would also need to backfill that 0.4 reading interventionist, reading specialist position at the LGN.
Yeah.
So perhaps I think let's not back ourselves into a corner and instead be a little bit more general. Currently, we had 3 math interventionists and we got rid of 2. We have Mrs. Dietz, who has moved out of her coaching role into the math interventionist role, and she splits her time between JCS and LGN. And so she's pretty awesome, but that's a lot. So we would probably look at our data and all of that just to really determine where that would go.
And I think from our standpoint, we would trust you to make that decision. That's your job to do. That's not us. So I think as far as where you guys think you can put your math and reading specialists, if you will, but you're gonna know based on the results, the STAR reports, the MCAS, you can take all that data and say, this person is most needed here. That's not our purview, that's all.
Yes.
And is that a position that you would have full-time, or is that like a 0.8? Roles?
We got rid of a full-time person. So I mean, ultimately, like, if we're gonna say we want it to be a full-time person, you good? Okay.
I'm just thinking.
She's shaking.
Like this is.
All right, can we go back now? Because Christine, what does that prorated cost?
Yeah.
And we're probably looking at January 1.
Then we would probably do long. terms of backfill.
Well,
So
correct.
that would be the same as that, that's 28 for us.
It would be the same cost.
For each
For
one,
long
okay.
term,
Perfect.
that's your long term, approximately 6 months. Or actually, with the interventions, could we put those in November 1st too, to get them in there quicker?
That's
If
what we're
we
doing.
can find someone to do the job.
I think
Because
that's gonna be the
again,
big
it all
one.
has, it all has impacts, right? So ultimately, our staff has first dibs on anything that we open up. Like that's part of our contract, that's the way things go. So we would need to kind of work through that, and see if there is a way that we could make that all happen.
So we could bump it up slightly, not knowing when it would come, like I said, 28, like 32, you know, give it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're waiting on this is again, my personal opinion, we're going to have to wait on music and art. The academic coordinators are kind of already in place, if you will, because they're already here.
Yeah, that's easy.
The
Like,
specialists is just giving their thing back, permanent building sites. I feel that we should just make this push for January. It gives us, one, it gives us a little peace of mind that like, okay, we know what's happening. And then it gives our admin team a little bit of a fair chance here to actually be able to post these positions, see what they get, see where they're gonna go.
Yeah.
See if there's a trickle down and how that is all going to work.
Yeah, it's in the same.
Fair.
Music. Yeah, yeah.
So I would recommend for.
Is that what you think though?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to give us a little bit more time. I think if for some reason we could do it earlier, great, like, that's great, but I don't know that we'll be able to.
So if we say
so.
January 1 though, but you
Yeah.
can get it done earlier, because I mean, to me, like I hate to have kids miss out on 2 months. It's, you know, because I don't know, like I just.
Sharon, I think I think this is a great point to make. You can get them sooner. We can use the $150,000 over the summer that we saved from some of these positions and in the moving and retirements and whatever else. You're looking at minimum, I mean, like, you're looking at $4,000 a position. We can easily backfill that kind of money, I
Yeah.
think, for the most part. And then if you're like, hey, I got something for November 1st, and we're ready to make this
It's
thing.
getting really small, Nick. I'm like fumbling around, all I can feel is like lint in my pocket. I think the goal will be when we come back from the winter break in January. It's, we're gonna have to wait for town meeting for everything to be approved, right? And then from there, we're gonna have to kind of work with the union, figure out how this is going to work. And then find people, right? Because I can't pull a science teacher out of a classroom without having somebody to teach those kids. I think January is probably more realistic, but again, and I also don't know if my staff is like, well, if these are the first things that are gonna get cut, I don't wanna leave.
Yeah.
So, we don't know.
That's a real possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still, yeah.
All we
All right.
can do is try.
That's all we can do.
And that's what I think, well, like I started this thing off with. This is an unconventional approach.
Yeah.
We cannot be in this situation every single year doing this. This is a nightmare. However, we are in a spot here that things didn't get handled correctly. And I think some of these positions wouldn't have been cut had we known there was more money in this budget than that we were led to believe that we were told.
But that's the thing though, is we can speculate that, but it still comes back to the bottom line is the number we were given is
Right.
what we had to, but the thing is, when they're drafting the budget, they can't hope that they're going to get, like, if they knew they were getting this extra 3 million, I'm just gonna say with the 3 million, shame on them. If they
Did you see
knew.
FinCom?
But I was gonna say, Dan, if you.
Did you watch FinCom?
No.
Okay.
Okay, then that, so you're.
No,
What
go
you're
ahead.
saying is, like, people were point blank asked when they knew.
Yeah.
Before
We
we
could've-
finalize a number tonight, Jen, could I just have you remind the committee of all the other cuts that we are still cutting?
Yeah,
Just so they can hear it and maybe something will trigger. Maybe,
Yes, Wade, I'd be more than happy to read these out loud.
we're here for the night, so.
All right, so let's go back. Let's start with reading. At the elementary level, so we'll say pre-K through 5, 28,406.94. All in agreement? Yes, yes, 5. Math, 28,406.94 at the pre-K through 5.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
So things that are still, cut, we have the high school guidance counselor,
All right,
two,
hold, Jen,
yep,
I know at some point we talked about this. So this is also important to note. With the $6.5 million override, there was 4 positions that were never coming back.
agreed.
Guidance counselor at the high school, preschool teacher, science teacher at Norton High, and a speech language pathologist assistant, which is a 0.4. Those 4 positions, even with 6.5, were never coming back. So the 29 positions is really 25. Plus, we've also brought back 3. So we're down to 22 to replace.
Ish, yep. All right, so, 2 day custodians, special education teacher from the high school, special education teacher from the middle school, elimination of middle school world language, 2 instructional technology specialists, 2 curriculum coaches, 1 math interventionist. This is really 2 middle school teachers. The early childhood coordinator, which we swapped out for the team chair, so technically the high school team chair is the position. Middle school art, the middle school dean, high school social studies and music, high school wellness. I think that's it.
You say high school, yeah, you just.
Yep.
Feels like we just did nothing after you just read that list.
Well, unfortunately, you can't come back from those types of cuts and, you know. It's,
Yeah, but after that whole list, it's like you're excited that we're bringing this stuff back, which is great, but you read that whole list and it's like,
So
my
much more.
God.
well, you know, and I think it's really important for us all to know that a lot of these positions, it took us 10 years to build. And so you can't rebuild it overnight. It's going to take us time to whittle away at the positions that are important to us, that we want to bring back. And it's going to take advocacy and a lot of creative thinking. And if we're saying that world language is a priority for us for the upcoming school year, we will be sure to include that, you know, as our top priority. But we're at the mercy a little bit of the town.
Yeah, and I think people have to realize, we're sitting in these seats doing the best we can with what we think is the best for our students. Right, because we're still gonna be hated for not bringing back something that somebody else thinks is more important. We're just in an absolutely no-win situation. And I just, I hope people can understand we are doing the best that we can for our students. That's what we're sitting here trying to do. So I just want to remind people.
And we'll have 2 camps
they
at
bash
town meeting.
us.
We'll have the people who are saying we're not asking for enough. And we'll also have the people who are saying, these are not recurring funds.
Yeah.
And
I would just like
so
to make sure we're not in this position again.
I agree. And I think that's my
unfortunately,
biggest
I'm not gonna
concern.
be here but it's just incredible to me that we have to ask these questions. I don't know.
And just echoing Sherry's comments, 100%, like we're in a no-win situation. I think though, and me and Dan and Jen mentioned this on Friday in our little get-together thing meeting. And I think it's important for everyone to hear from our administrators, our school committee, our teachers, our students, our community members. The doom and gloom has got to stop. We've got to start moving in a positive direction. We've got to start looking at our schools that we do some really damn good things in these schools. We just heard from DECA. We haven't highlighted that. It's here. We get it. Do we put that up? We need to start doing that type of stuff. It's a community effort. I get it, for, against, indifferent to the override. At this point now, it doesn't matter. It's been decided. The town has voted. There's no and I've said this multiple times. There's no override coming next year. So we need to, or maybe forever after, whatever. I mean, but we need to look at this from a standpoint of like, we get it. It's tough. I think you saw it tonight. The school committee is making a full-fledged move in the right direction, we know we need to do this. We know we have to try to get some of these positions back. We know the importance of what these people do. And we need to really start looking forward and stop looking behind us. What's happened has happened. Let's move these schools forward. How can we work as a community between the NTA, between the administrators, and what us 5 can do for the town of Norton to try to move this district forward? Keep looking back. keep doing the doom and gloom, keep, doing all that stuff it's not gonna help us. We're just gonna sit here, keep spinning our circles and saying, oh, blame this person, blame that person. And that's all over and done with, so Sherry always says it, I think, it's like, be kind, be nice. And like, yeah, if you have some ideas, we want to hear them, that's how we get things done. We've kind of opened up these meetings to let the public and administrators and teachers and people jump in, because again, I think it's important that we've kind of, in a way, hit a reset button to a certain degree. And now it's like, all right, is this rock bottom? We will never really know, I guess, until we go into next year, but we're here to help. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. So I really want to kind of start stressing a little bit of what's done is done. Let's get the positivity moving back. We have very smart people. I have full trust in our administrative team, starting with Dr. O'Neill to get this figured.
And what's the final number?
Christine, what's the final number we're gonna ask for?
Yeah.
Yeah,
$482.93.
and does that include the 160? The 160,
We had
originally.
Chapter 70.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so 482.
Oh, wait.
You're
Yes,
confused for Christine, because it's less.
We
than-
have a lot of tabs going.
So I have the final number for positions as the exact same we came in with. We just switched out foreign language, math and reading specialist. So I have it at 321,291.
Oh, I did it with the 160.
Yes.
I'm sorry, with chapter.
Oh, it's-
So that's 480,
That was our new.
That's our total.
Our new
Yeah.
total.
Is it 482?
I wrote down 3 times. Sorry, new one.
New one.
Plus.
All right. So you guys need to vote on the new number.
Can you, Christine, what was that final number you had? I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. You're 532,093.86.
I just want to double check they're in a different cell, just to make sure.
Exactly, that's what I just did too.
$482.93.86.
Why are we so off?
What do you have?
532.
You're off by 50 grand.
Oh, because I added the schematic design.
Oh, don't add that.
That's why, that's just, yeah.
I'm like, it's exactly 50 grand.
Right.
There it is. All right, so the final vote then will be for the town meeting article of 4,082. Oh, sorry, visual edits 912. $482,093.86.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Dan moved it, Audrey seconded, vote 5-0. All right, next agenda item topic,
There's another one?
It's just other business.
other business.
Please have nothing.
I have nothing.
All good.
Good, thank you, Jeff.
Meeting,
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
all those in favor?
All right, night call, friends.
The record.